Chapter 10. Changes. The crying sound suddenly stopped. Zhao Yuzhen raised her head. She stared at Fu Hongxue with an astonished look on her face. "I'm not Zhao Yuzhen." "Why do you say that I am not Zhao Yuzhen?" Fu Hongxue did not answer her. Instead, he asked a question he should not have asked. "How many months pregnant are you?" Zhao Yuzhen hesitated for a while, before finally saying, 7 months. Fu Hongxue said, "You've already been pregnant for 7 months, but your father only just found out about it today." "Is he blind?" Zhao Yuzhen said. "He isn't blind, but he also isn't my real father." Her voice was filled with hatred. "He knew about this all along. He was the one who arranged for me to meet with King, because King was a famous figure of the martial world and the master of the Peacock Manor, as well as the person whom Escort Chief Liu admired the most." Yan Nanfei interjected, "Escort Chief Liu?" "Liu Zheng'e, of the Zhenyuan Escort Agency." "Your father is a trainer for the Zhenyuan Escort Agency?" Zhao Yuzhen said. "He used to be," Yan Nanfei said. "And now?" Zhao Yuzhen said. "He drinks too much alcohol." "No escort agency wants a martial arts instructor who is drunk all the time," Yan Nanfei said. "Escort Chief Liu dismissed him from his service." Zhao Yuzhen nodded. Escort Chief Liu wasn't necessarily against drinking alcohol, but after drinking, father actually mistook one of his fellow dart instructors for a thief and even chopped off one of his hands. "That was too excessive," Yan Nanfei said. "He wanted to make use of the relationship you had with King to return to the Zhenyuan Escort Agency." Zhao Yuzhen said. "He really wanted to. Even if I truly was his daughter, he still would have done the same thing," Yan Nanfei said. "Unfortunately, King wasn't willing to do this. In addition, Liu Zheng'e wasn't a person who showed favoritism," Zhao Yuzhen said. "Thus, even though King gave him 100 taels of silver as drinking money every month, he still was not satisfied. Whenever he became drunk, he would think of ways to torment me," Yan Nanfei said. "And it wasn't until today that you felt you could take no more?" Zhao Yuzhen forced herself not to cry. "I am female. Officially, I am his daughter. No matter what he does to me, I can take it. Only, this morning a broken bar," Yan Nanfei said. "What did he do this morning?" Zhao Yuzhen said. "He wanted to beat the baby in my stomach to death. He didn't want me to give birth to King's child, because he broken bar because he knows about the destruction of the Peacock Manor." Yan Nanfei's face changed. "But that happened only last night. He shouldn't have known about it," Zhao Yuzhen said. "But he did know." Yan Nanfei's face sunk. Fu Hongxue's face became all the more pale. Only one type of person would get the news so soon. Even if he himself hadn't personally gone to the Peacock Manor to kill people last night, he definitely was a lookout. Yan Nanfei said, "If I saw so many innocent people being wrongfully killed, when I got back home, I would have wanted to get really drunk as well." Fu Hongxue was silent. Suddenly, he said, "Do you know Liu Zheng'e?" "What type of person is he?" Yan Nanfei said. "The Zhenyuan Escort Agency covers a lot of territory. It isn't an easy task to become the leader of the agency." Fu Hongxue said. "Is he good at using human resources?" Yan Nanfei said. "All of his subordinates are experts and first-class experts." Fu Hongxue's hands tightened. Zhao Yuzhen said, "My foster father's martial arts abilities are not weak. If alcohol hadn't harmed him, he might have become the leader as well." Fu Hongxue coldly said, "It is very hard to be the leader of an escort agency. It is very easy to kill people." Yan Nanfei said, "You believe him to be one of the killers?" Fu Hongxue said, "Not a killer, an accomplice." Yan Nanfei said, "Then we should go find him right now." Fu Hongxue said, "When we got into the carriage, I already issued orders to the driver. We are already headed in the right direction." Zhao Yuzhen looked directly at him. Liars definitely would not dare to stare into his eyes, and they definitely wouldn't be so calm and collected. Yan Nanfei looked at her, then looked at Fu Hongxue. It seemed as though he too had some opinion he wished to speak. But before he had even opened his mouth, a person loudly said, "We definitely cannot go to the Zhao family right now." Minai Uxin was awake. She had lost too much blood and her body was too weak. Clearly, She had used all of her available energy to say these words. Yan Nanfei helped her lie down in a more comfortable position before asking, "Why is it that we cannot go to the Zhao family?" Minai Uxin panted, "Because there definitely must be a trap there." In her urgency to explain her line of thinking, her pallid face began to turn red. Gongsun definitely wouldn't let us off so easily. Naturally, he'll realize that we'll want to hunt down Zhao. They have many people, all of whom are experts, and now I am injured. Yan Nanfei wouldn't let her finish. "I understand what you are trying to say, and so does Fu Hongxue." Minai Uxin said, "No, you do not understand. I'm not saying this out of fear for myself, and I know that the two of you are definitely enough to deal with them. But what about Miss Zhao? You two will have to defend against Yang Wuji's sword, Gong Sun's hook, and Xiao Suwu's flying dagger. How will you have the extra energy to look after her?" Fu Hongxue did not speak, nor did he respond. Minai Uxin looked at him. "You absolutely must listen to me this time. We should have the carriage come to a stop immediately." Fu Hongxue said, "No need." Minai Uxin said, "Why a broken bar? Why aren't you willing?" Fu Hongxue's features were still totally expressionless. He dully said, "Because this road isn't the road which will take us to the Zhao family." Minai Uxin was startled. "It isn't?" "Why isn't it?" Fu Hongxue said, "Because from the very beginning, I ordered him to take this carriage out of the city as quickly as possible. How would he dare to go on any other road?" Minai Uxin let out a relieved breath. "So you had the same line of thought as I did." Fu Hongxue coldly said, "I never take risks with the lives of others." Minai Uxin said, "But just a while ago broken bar." Fu Hongxue said, "I only said what I said in order to test Miss Zhao." But before he finished his words, the carriage came to a halt. The carriage driver turned around. Grinning, he said, "We've already reached the outskirts of the city." "Hero Fu, which road do you want to take?" Fu Hongxue coldly stared at his smiling face. He suddenly asked, "Have you learned the martial arts of the Boundless Pre-Heaven sect?" The carriage driver's smile suddenly turned stiff. "I've never learned any martial arts at all." Fu Hongxue ignored him. He asked again, "Are Zhao Wuji and Zhao Yulang your teachers or your family elders?" The carriage driver stared at him in shock, as though he had seen a ghost. He was very skilled at driving carriages. This entire time, he had sat in the front, driving the carriage. Not only had he not performed any actions, he had been very obedient. He really could not understand how this pale-faced freak managed to determine his origins with a single glance. Fu Hongxue said, "The color of your skin is smooth, and the texture is finely detailed, as though it had been boiled in oil. Only a person who has practiced the martial arts of the Boundless Pre-Heaven sect would be like this." What a keen eye this freak had. The driver finally let out a sigh. With a forced smile, he said, "I am Zhao Ping. Zhao Wuji is my father." Fu Hongxue said, "Are you nicknamed A Forefinger?" Zhao Ping forced himself to nod. He could already tell that lying to this freak would be extremely unwise. Fu Hongxue said, "Based on your family background, you should not be doing such shameless things in secret. I should help the Boundless Pre-Heaven sect purge itself." Zhao Ping's countenance changed. "But yeah, broken bar." Fu Hongxue didn't let him speak. He coldly said, "If it weren't for the fact that you are the only son of Zhao Wuji, you would already be dead and underneath the wheels of this carriage." He was sitting in the carriage. He hadn't even moved. The most flexible finger was the forefinger. How could a man sitting in a carriage without moving kill Zhao Ping, who was as flexible as a forefinger? Zhao Ping finally understood. He was about to rise up. Fu Hongxue said, "I will not kill you today. I will only require that you leave behind one of your murderous hands." Zhao Ping suddenly laughed loudly. "I apologize. My hands are still useful, and so I cannot give them to you." Suddenly, a saber flash could be seen, followed by a flowering explosion of blood. Zhao Ping's form rose up in alarm. He suddenly saw a bloody hand fall down from thin air. He still hadn't realized that this was his own hand. The saber was too fast. He still hadn't felt any pain. He even was still laughing. Only after the hand fell to the floor did he realize that he was missing one. The sound of his laughter immediately turned into a miserable cry. His body tumbled down heavily. The saber flash had disappeared. The saber had been sheathed unsheathed. Fu Hongxue still remained seated in the back without moving. Zhao Ping bound his severed wrist with fabric from his clothes. With his sole remaining hand, he rolled up the window of the carriage, staring at Fu Hongxue. Fu Hongxue said, "You still aren't leaving?" Gritting his teeth, Zhao Ping said, "I am not leaving. I want to see your saber." Fu Hongxue said, "My saber isn't for viewing." Zhao Ping said, "You chopped off my hand. You should at least allow me to see your saber." Fu Hongxue stared at him, then suddenly said, "Fine." Look. A saber flash. Strands of severed hair floated in the air. It was Zhao Ping's hair. By the time he saw these strands of severed hair, the saber flash had disappeared. The saber had been sheathed. He still hadn't seen the saber. His face was contorted with terror. He suddenly took one step backwards after another. He cried out in alarm with a hoarse voice, "You aren't human. You're a vicious ghost. You are using an evil saber." A pitch-black saber. A pair of pitch-black pupils. Zhao Yuzhen was also staring at the saber. She also stared at it for a long time. Her eyes were filled with terror as well. It seemed as though this saber had become physically grafted onto Fu Hongxue's hand. It had become part of his body. Zhao Yuzhen asked probingly, "Have you ever put this saber down?" Fu Hongxue said, "Never." Zhao Yuzhen said, "Can you let me see it?" Fu Hongxue said, "Number." Zhao Yuzhen said, "Have you ever let anyone see it?" Fu Hongxue said, "Never." Zhao Yuzhen said, "Is this really an evil saber?" Fu Hongxue said, "The evil lies not in the saber. It lies within the heart. If a person holds evil within his heart, he will not be able to avoid this saber." He did not move. The carriage did not move either. Yan Nanfei let out a sigh. "It seems as though there's no longer any place for us to go." Fu Hongxue said, "There is." Yan Nanfei said, "Where?" Fu Hongxue said, "Peacock Manor." Yan Nanfei was very surprised. "Peacock Manor again? What's left there?" Fu Hongxue said, "A secret cellar." Yan Nanfei immediately understood. "You want Minai Uxin to hide herself there to recuperate?" Fu Hongxue said, "No one will guess that she is there. That place is a place of death." Yan Nanfei said, "Would this, then, be considered rebirth in a place of death?" Fu Hongxue said, "Yes." Yan Nanfei said, "Will we still use this carriage?" Fu Hongxue said, "Carriages cannot reveal secrets, nor can they betray people." Yan Nanfei said, "Only people can betray people. That's why you got rid of Zhao Ping." Fu Hongxue said, "Correct." Yan Nanfei said, "Who will drive our carriage now?" Fu Hongxue said, "You." Although a big hole had been blown into the stone wall of the hidden cellar, the rest of it was as solid as it ever was. Yan Nanfei said, "Now, the only way a person can leave this place is through this hole." Fu Hongxue said, "There can be leaving, but there cannot be a person leaving." Yan Nanfei said, "Why?" Fu Hongxue said, "Because Minai Uxin still has the peacock plume." Yan Nanfei said, "Her peacock plume is still useful?" Fu Hongxue said, "It is." Yan Nanfei said, "So long as she stands guard here with her peacock plume, nobody will be able to charge in?" Fu Hongxue said, "Nobody." Yan Nanfei sighed. "No matter what, I hope that no one else will come here." Zhao Yuzhen couldn't help but say, "Do you intend to leave her here by herself?" Fu Hongxue said, "Number." Zhao Yuzhen said, "Who will stay behind with her?" Fu Hongxue said, "You." Zhao Yuzhen said, "How about you guys? Are you leaving?" Fu Hongxue said, "Yes." Zhao Yuzhen said, "Where are you going?" Fu Hongxue said, "We are going to kill people." Zhao Yuzhen said, "Are you going to kill those murderers?" Fu Hongxue nodded. "Gong Santa won't let us off. Nor can I let him off." Zhao Yuzhen stared at the saber in his hand. "Do all murderers have evil in their heart?" Fu Hongxue said, "Yes." Zhao Yuzhen said, "Will he definitely be unable to avoid your saber?" Fu Hongxue said, "Definitely." Zhao Yuzhen suddenly knelt down, and her tears began to flow. "I beg you, bring his heart back here. I want to use his heart as a sacrifice to memorialize the father of my child." Fu Hongxue stared at her. He suddenly said, "I can do this sort of thing, but you cannot say that sort of words." Zhao Yuzhen said, "Why?" Fu Hongxue said, because those words contain a murderous aura. Sir Yuzhen said, "Are you afraid that the child in my belly will be contaminated by the murderous aura?" Fu Hongxue nodded. "A child with a murderous aura will find it difficult to avoid killing others when he grows up." Sir Yuzhen gritted her teeth. "I hope he will kill others." "It's better to kill others than to be killed," Fu Hongxue said. "You are forgetting one thing." Sir Yuzhen said, "Go ahead." Fu Hongxue said, "Killers will themselves be killed, sooner or later." The room was gloomy and dark. Even the tables and the chairs were made out of stone. They were both hard and cold. Minai Uxin, however, was seated very comfortably, because before he left, Fu Hongxue gave her all of the mattresses in the carriage. Sir Yuzhen also was given one of the soft mattresses from the beautiful carriage. As soon as Fu Hongxue left, she couldn't help but sigh. "I didn't imagine he was such an attentive person." Minai Uxin said, "He's a weird person." Yan Nanfei is weird as well. But both of them are people, and both of them are men, real men. Sir Yuzhen said, "It seems that both of them treat you pretty well." Minai Uxin said, "I treat them pretty well as well." Sir Yuzhen said, "But in the end, you'll have to choose between them. One woman can't be married to two men." Minai Uxin forced out a laugh. "I've already made my choice." Sir Yuzhen said, "Who have you chosen?" Minai Uxin said, "Myself." She lightly continued, "Although a woman can't be married to two men at once, she can refuse to marry either." Sir Yuzhen shut her mouth. Naturally, she could tell that Minai Uxin was unwilling to discuss this any further. Minai Uxin gently stroked the peacock plume. Her hands were even colder than gold. Something was weighing on her mind. Did the words of Sir Yuzhen provoke her thoughts? After a long time, Sir Yuzhen suddenly asked, "Is the peacock plume in your hands real?" Minai Uxin said, "It is not." Sir Yuzhen said, "Can I see it?" Minai Uxin said, "You cannot." Sir Yuzhen couldn't resist asking, "Why not?" Minai Uxin said, "Because even though it isn't the real peacock plume, it is still a tool for killing people, and it carries a murderous aura. I, too, am unwilling to allow the child in your stomach to be contaminated with a murderous aura." Sir Yuzhen looked at her. She suddenly laughed. "Do you know why I am laughing?" Minai Uxin said, "I do not." Sir Yuzhen said, "I suddenly feel as though your speech mannerisms are absolutely identical to those of Fu Hongxue, therefore a broken bar." Minai Uxin said, "Therefore?" Sir Yuzhen laughed again. "Therefore, if you absolutely had to marry someone, I think you would definitely marry him." Minai Uxin laughed as well, but her laughter was very forced. "It's a good thing that I do not absolutely have to marry someone." Sir Yuzhen hung her head. "But I do." Minai Uxin said. "Why?" Sir Yuzhen sadly said, "Because of my child. I can't allow him to be without a father." Minai Uxin also couldn't resist probing further. "Who do you want to be his father?" Sir Yuzhen said, "Naturally, I would want a real man, a man who could protect me." Minai Uxin again couldn't resist asking, "A man like Fu Hongxue?" Sir Yuzhen actually did not deny it. Minai Uxin's laughter became even more forced. "Do you know how heartless he is?" Sir Yuzhen faintly smiled. "Sentimental or heartless? How can one really tell?" "Are we still riding this carriage?" Who should be the driver now?" "You." Yan Nanfei finally couldn't control his anger. "Why is it still me?" Fu Hongxue said. "Because I don't know how." Yan Nanfei started. "Why is it that whenever I hear your words, I am startled?" Fu Hongxue said, "Because I speak the truth." Yan Nanfei could only leap onto the front of the carriage. Whipping the horse, he said, "See, this isn't very hard at all. Everyone knows how." "Why don't you learn how?" Fu Hongxue said, "Since everyone knows how, then anyone can drive for me. Why must I learn?" Yan Nanfei was startled yet again. "You really do speak nothing but the truth." He shook his head, a wry smile on his lips. "But I wish you would tell a lie once in a while." "Why?" "Because the truth never seems to be as comfortable as a lie." The carriage moved forward. It traveled for a very long time. Fu Hongxue was meditating the entire time. He suddenly said, "You recognize the person who was playing chess with Yang Wuji?" Yan Nanfei nodded. "He is called Guqi. He one of Gong Tsayu's major subordinates." Fu Hongxue said, "I hear he has 4 master martial artists in his employ. Together, they are known as Azitha, Kin, Chess, Qi, Calligraphy, Shu, art. Hua Yan Nanfei said, there are 5 master martial artists: Yu Qin, Yu Qi, Wang Shu, Wu Hua, and Xiao Jian, sword. Fu Hongxue said, you have met all 5 of them? Yan Nanfei said, I only met 3. At that time, Gong Xiu hadn't met Yu Qin and Xiao Jian. Fu Hongxue stared at him. When was that? Yan Nanfei shut his mouth. Fu Hongxue refused to let it drop. He continued to ask, was it when you and Gong Xiu often met with one another? Yan Nanfei's mouth was still shut. Fu Hongxue said, you know all of his secrets. You are very familiar with all of his highest-ranking subordinates. Naturally, the 2 of you had many dealings in the past. Yan Nanfei did not deny it. He could not deny it. Fu Hongxue said, what type of relationship do the 2 of you have, exactly? Yan Nanfei coldly said, everyone always says that you value your words as highly as gold. Why do I always feel as though you are an overly talkative person? Fu Hongxue said, because you will not lie, but are afraid to tell the truth. Yan Nanfei said, right now, I am talking about you, not me. Fu Hongxue said, but the one I am talking about is you. Yan Nanfei said, can we talk about something else? Even now, I still have no idea where you are taking us. Fu Hongxue said, you know, in order to kill a hunter, you must go to the place where he has set his traps. Yan Nanfei said, the home of Saodonglai then? Fu Hongxue said, originally. Yan Nanfei said, no longer? Fu Hongxue said, dead people have no homes. Yan Nanfei said, Saodonglai is already a dead man? Fu Hongxue said, thus, that place is now nothing more than a trap. Yan Nanfei let out another sigh. I only hope that those hunters are still there and have not left. Fu Hongxue said, they probably have not yet left. To be a hunter, the first thing one must learn is patience. Saodonglai really was a dead man. Even his corpse was ice cold. This wasn't strange at all. If one's chosen profession is murder, the first thing one should learn is how to silence witnesses. So long as you join assassins in even one of their activities, you should be prepared to be killed and silenced at any point in time. In their eyes, a person's life definitely was not worth more than that of a wild dog. Saodonglai had been killed like a wild dog, beneath the tree in the courtyard. Fu Hongxue saw him from afar. His eyes were filled with sorrow and melancholy. Life was originally a precious thing. Why is it that some people simply refuse to cherish it? He pitied this man, perhaps only because he himself had been ruined by the word alcohol before. Alcohol wasn't a bad thing in and of itself. The problem lies within oneself. If you yourself are willing to sink into vice and are unable to extricate yourself, then there is definitely no one in the entire world who can rescue you. Yan Nanfei's thoughts and feelings on this clearly were not as deep as his. He was still young. His heart was still filled with lofty ideals and aspirations. Thus, he only wanted to ask, the trap is here. Where are the huntsmen? Fu Hongxue was silent. Before he had a chance to open his mouth, there was a light cry from the back of the house. Where the dagger? The dagger gleamed, looking like a bolt of lightning as it flew towards his back. Fu Hongxue did not dodge, did not move. It was his saber which moved. With a clanging sound, sparks exploded in all directions. A dagger flash filled the sky, appearing as though it had pierced through the clouds and left the world. Fu Hongxue's saber was already sheathed. Yan Nanfei let out a breath. Looks like at least one person remains here. Fu Hongxue dully said, I can tell that he has long since learned the art of patience. Just as they finished these 2 sentences, the dagger flash fell down from the heavens. When it fell down in 2 parts. As the parts crashed down to earth like meteorites, it was the handle and blade of a flying dagger. The 4-inch-long flying dagger had been snapped in half. The flying dagger had attacked him, but his saber had countered the dagger. The dagger flew many meters up into the air. Who could imagine the speed with which this flying dagger had been sent out? But with a backwards flip of his saber, Fu Hongxue had deflected this knife, snapping in half its blade, which had been refined and smelted 100 times over. Someone sighed from within the room. Truly an incomparable saber technique. You did not misspeak. Fu Hongxue slowly turned around. Why haven't you left yet? As soon as he turned around, he saw Xiao Sawu. Xiao Sawu walked out empty-handed. He coldly said, The A4 with houts of my name does not include A without shame. Even if I were to leave, I would leave openly and with dignity. He had no dagger in his hands, appearing as though he were a virgin who had suddenly been stripped naked. He didn't even know what he should do with his hands now. But he did not flee. Fu Hongxue looked at him. You have only one dagger? Xiao Suwu said. The person I came to fight today is you. I can only bring one dagger. Fu Hongxue said. Why? Xiao Suwu said. Because I know that the first dagger is the last dagger. Thus, when I strike out with that first dagger, I must choose all of my strength. Fu Hongxue said. You forced yourself into a deadly situation, so that when you strike, you would strike wholeheartedly. Xiao Suwu said. Precisely so. He slowly added. In addition, after I strike with that first dagger, I must succeed in landing the strike. Otherwise, even if I had hundreds or thousands of other daggers, none of them would land. Fu Hongxue stared at him. He suddenly waved his hand. Well said. Leave. Xiao Suwu said. You are letting me leave? Fu Hongxue said. I am not going to kill you this time, only because you said 3 words. Xiao Suwu said. What 3 words? Fu Hongxue said. Wear my dagger. Before he sent out his flying dagger, he had given a warning. This definitely was not how a despicable, contemptible man would act. Fu Hongxue said, my saber only kills evil, deceitful people. Your dagger is evil and deceitful, but you yourself are not. Xiao Suwu's hand suddenly clenched. A strange expression suddenly appeared in his eyes. After a long time, he slowly said, if I had not said those 3 words, would you have been able to defeat my dagger? Fu Hongxue said. You regret it? Xiao Suwu said. Not regret. I just want to know the truth. Fu Hongxue stared at him for a long time. He coldly said, if you had not said those 3 words, you would be a dead man right now. Xiao Suwu did not say a single word further. He turned around and left. He walked very quickly, and did not look back. Someone else sighed in the room. Even if he does not regret it, you will regret it. A man slowly walked out, dressed in black clothes and white socks. It was Ureshii. Fu Hongxue said, regret it? Regret what? Ureshii said, regret not killing him. Fu Hongxue's hands clenched tightly. He had 2 chances to kill that arrogant youngster, but he had given up both of them. Ureshii said, once a golden opportunity is missed, it will never come again. If you want to kill someone, abstain from nothing. He laughed, then continued, this time, you did not kill him. I fear that next time, you will die to him. Fu Hongxue stared at him. He suddenly laughed coldly. And you? Should I kill you this time? Ureshii said, that depends. Do you want to kill my central pieces, or the great dragon I have to the right? Are you playing the white pieces, or the black pieces? These are, obviously, all chess references. Fu Hongxue did not understand. He did not play chess. Only people of leisure played chess. Whenever he had free time, he gripped his saber. Thus, Ureshii could only laugh alone. What I meant to say is, you cannot kill me. You can only kill my chess pieces, because I only know how to play chess. In addition, this chess game is between you guys. I'm not involved. You cannot even kill my chess pieces. Smiling, he walked past Fu Hongxue. He knew that Fu Hongxue definitely would not strike, because he did not guard himself at all and anyone could kill him. But Fu Hongxue was not anyone. Fu Hongxue was Fu Hongxue. Yan Nanfei watched as he walked away. He suddenly laughed. Looks like you didn't make the wrong move, Ureshii said, but I lost 3 games in a row today. Yan Nanfei said, you lost to Yang Wuji? Ureshii said, he is the only one who can beat me. Yan Nanfei said, why? Ureshii said, because he treats killing chess pieces the same way as he treats killing people. He abstains from nothing at all, whereas I have burdens on my mind. Yan Nanfei said, burdens on your mind? Ureshii said, I am afraid of losing at chess. Only people who fear losing at chess will lose chess matches that they should not have lost. The more they are afraid, the more they will lose. The more they lose, the more afraid they become. Only people whose hearts are filled with fear will kill people they should not kill. Fear of justice, fear of truth. The night was very deep. Ureshii walked out the door. He suddenly turned around, then said, I recommend that you two leave as well. Yan Nanfei said, there is no longer anyone here? Ureshii said, none living, only the dead. Yan Nanfei said, Gongsun and the others are not inside? Yuchi said. They didn't even come, because they were impatient to go to another place. Yan Nanfei said. Where did they go? Yuchi said. Wherever you came from, that is the place they went. Yan Nanfei wanted to ask further, but Yuchi had already departed. Yan Nanfei chased out the door, but he had already disappeared. He could only hear Yuchi's voice float towards them from far away. The legends say that when the peacock dies, the bright moon, Minayu, will sink down as well. It will sink to the ground, sink to the sea, a broken bar. Chapter 11. Where did the bright moon go? The night was deep, the world was covered in darkness, because tonight, there was no bright moon. Was tonight's bright moon already dead? Yan Nanfei whipped the horse into a mad gallop, while Fu Hongxue sat next to him, unmoving. What a beautiful horse carriage! What a somber carriage interior! Why must we ride the carriage? Because we have a carriage. The horse is already tired. An exhausted horse can't carry two people, but it can pull a carriage. Because the carriage has wheels? Correct. We have legs as well. Why can't we walk? Because we are tired as well. We need to conserve our energy. Conserve it for killing? As long as there are people to kill, as long as there are people who should be killed. The peacock was dead. The peacock manor was no longer the peacock manor. There were a few spots of light in the darkness. The faint light of the stars shone down upon the ruins, making the scene appear even more desolate. The horse, which had galloped to and fro for hundreds of li, finally collapsed. Nobody was in the underground cellar. There was nothing at all in there. Everything which could be removed had been removed. The torchlight was flickering, because the hand with which Yan Nanfei was holding the torch was shaking. It is said that when the peacock dies, the bright moon would go down with it as well. Yan Nanfei gnashed his teeth forcefully. How did they know? How did they know that there would be people here? The hand with which Fu Hongxue was gripping his saber did not tremble, but the muscles on his face were twitching. His pallid face had already begun to turn red, a bizarre red, a frightening red. Yan Nanfei said, when he came, there was definitely nobody following us. Who was at our broken bar? Fu Hongxue suddenly howled. Get out! Yan Nanfei was startled. Are you telling me to get out? Fu Hongxue did not speak again. His lips were already closed tightly. Astonished, Yan Nanfei looked at him. One step at a time, he retreated from the cellar. Before he had fully exited, Fu Hongxue suddenly collapsed, as though an invisible whip had struck him. As soon as he collapsed, he started to go into convulsions. That invisible whip seemed to continue to strike him, lashing him without end. Fu Hongxue's entire body was contorted and twisted in his agony. Low growls constantly emanated from his throat, sounding like the dying growls of a wild animal. I was wrong. A broken bar. With one hand, he scratched and clawed at the floor, appearing as though he were a man about to drown to death who was trying to grab an invisible wooden log to hold onto. The ground was strewn with stone rubble. His fingernails disintegrated. His hand was starting to bleed. His other hand continued to tightly clench his saber. The saber was still the saber. The saber is heartless, and so it endures perpetually. Yan Nanfei knew that he definitely did not want anyone to see his current agony and his chronic illness. But Yan Nanfei did not leave, because he knew that although the saber was still the saber, Fu Hongxue was no longer Fu Hongxue. Right now, anyone who walked in could kill Fu Hongxue. Why must heaven torment him so? Why must a man like this suffer an illness such as this? Yan Nanfei was just barely able to control himself, preventing himself from shedding tears. He extinguished the torch. He no longer could bear to watch any more. But his hand was already gripping the hilt of his sword, hidden under his clothes. In the middle of the darkness, the hole in the middle of the stone cliff appeared as though it were the mythical evil eye of some vile beast. He swore an oath. If anyone wanted to charge into that hole right now, that person would immediately die underneath his sword. He was certain of himself. No one entered from the hole. But suddenly, The darkness was split by torchlight. Where did the torchlight come from? The torchlight entered from the door. The door was opened. 5 people came out. 2 of them held torches high. They stood at the entranceway. The other 3 strode inside. The first person's right wrist was wrapped in white cloth. He wore a ribbon around his neck. His left hand was carrying a scimitar. His eyes were filled with hatred and enmity. The man by his side was wearing a pitch-black Taoist robe. His footsteps were very sure and stable. He gave the appearance of being fully prepared for anything. The last person's face was crisscrossed with scars. Although a hint of a smile played about his lips, it only made him look all the more insidious and cruel. Yan Nanfai's heart sunk, while bile rose from his stomach. It tasted both sour and bitter. He should have realized that although others might not be able to open those 13 locks, Hongxue was able to open them. The hole in the wall wasn't the only way by which one might enter or depart from this cellar. None of them thought of this. All of them had been too certain of themselves. Thus, they had committed a fatal error. Hongxue suddenly stretched his hand out. He opened his palm, revealing a golden object sparkling in it. It was the awe-inspiring peacock plume. The peacock plume was in his hands. What about Minai Uxin? Yan Nanfai was barely able to restrain himself and prevent himself from vomiting. Hongxue laughed. You shouldn't have let her use this hidden projectile weapon to guard the hole. We are men, not mice. We don't know how to burrow through the ground or dig holes. His laughter was extremely joyful. If it hadn't been for the fact that she wholeheartedly focused on guarding that hole, it wouldn't have been easy for us to enter. Yan Nanfai was unable to prevent himself from letting out a long sigh. I was wrong, Hongxue said. You really were wrong. You should have killed me, Yang Wuji lightly said. Thus, in the future, you must remember my words. If you want to kill somebody, you should abstain from nothing at all. Hongxue said, you shouldn't remind him. If he has a second chance, I'm a dead man for sure. Yang Wuji said, will he have a second chance? Hongxue said, number. Yang Wuji shook his head. He leisurely said, the only person he is now capable of killing is himself. Hongxue said, he could kill Fu Hongxue at least. Yang Wuji said, Fu Hongxue belongs to Zhao Ping. He isn't even able to move. Yan Nanfai looked at them. He suddenly felt as though their words were coming from far away. He should have concentrated all of his energy to defend against them. He should have known that this was a critical, life and death point for him. They definitely wouldn't let him off, nor could he cower back. Even if there were a place he could retreat to, he would not. But he suddenly felt very weary. Was it because, in his heart, he had already admitted that he wasn't a match for these two? The bright moon had sunk and vanished. The undefeatable god of sabers had fallen. What hope could he still have? Hongxue was asking Zhao Ping, who cut off your hand? Zhao Ping said, Fu Hongxue. Hongxue said, do you want to gain revenge? Zhao Ping said, I do. Hongxue said, how do you plan to handle him? Zhao Ping said, I have a way. Hongxue said, why haven't you made your move yet? Can't you tell that this is your best chance? Yang Wuji said, when a good opportunity is missed, it never comes again. If you wait for Fu Hongxue to wake up, it'll be too late. Hongxue said, at this moment, you no longer need to worry about Yan Nanfai. Zhao Ping couldn't help but ask, why not? Hongxue said, because if he moves, Fu Hongxue will immediately turn into a peacock. Zhao Ping said, a peacock? Hongxue said, no matter who is struck by this peacock plume, that person will turn into a peacock. A dead peacock. Zhao Ping laughed. But I don't want for him to die so quickly. Hongxue laughed as well. Neither do I. Zhao Ping suddenly set down his scimitar, then charged in. He grabbed Fu Hongxue by his hair, lifted up his knee, then slammed it against his jaw. Next, he launched a chopping attack against his neck. Just as Fu Hongxue's head was drooping down, Zhao Ping sent out a kick. It sent Fu Hongxue flying into the stone wall. Next, he rushed over and put his right elbow across Fu Hongxue's throat. In a fierce voice he said, open your eyes and see who I am. The blue veins on Fu Hongxue's forehead were bulging out. He could neither resist nor breathe. Zhao Ping sneered, you chopped my right hand off, but I intend to use my left arm to break your neck. The blue veins on Yan Nanfai's forehead were beginning to bulge out as well. as though he was unable to breathe as well. Hongxue grinned hideously. "Why don't you go rescue your friend? Can it be that you are just going to stand here and watch him die?" Yan Nanfei couldn't move. He knew that if he moved, Fu Hongxue would die even more quickly. But he couldn't be still either. Zhao Ping was using his other hand to ferociously slap Fu Hongxue's face. It seemed that he didn't intend to immediately take Fu Hongxue's life, but this sort of humiliation was even worse than death. Yan Nanfei tightly grasped the handle of his sword. Sweat dripped down from his head like rain. He suddenly said, "Even if you can kill him, you won't necessarily be able to kill me." Hongxue said, "What do you propose?" Yan Nanfei said, "I want you to release him." Hongxue said, "What about you?" Yan Nanfei said, "I am willing to die." Hongxue laughed. "Not only do we intend for you to die, we do not intend to allow him to live." Yang Wuji coldly said, "If you wish to kill someone, abstain from nothing at all." Hongxue's laughter stopped. He loudly shouted, "Zhao Ping, kill him! Kill him immediately!" Zhao Ping gritted his teeth, then exerted strength with his elbow. Just at this moment, there was a flash of saber light. It was Fu Hongxue's saber. In heaven or on the earth, it was a saber without equal. They all thought that this battle was practically a guaranteed victory, because they had all forgotten something. Fu Hongxue's hand remained tightly clenched around his saber. Just at this moment, Yan Nanfei suddenly swept his sword about. Scarlet points of sword light sprayed about the room like rain, surrounding Hongxue. Yang Wuji's sword appeared as well. His sword-drawing technique was skilled and ingenious, and his strike was accurate and efficient. His sword stabbed out at precisely the point which would be fatal for Yan Nanfei. Even if Yan Nanfei was able to kill Hongxue with his attack, he himself would definitely die to Yang Wuji's sword. He had no choice but to retract his assault and defend himself. Hongxue's body immediately emerged from the ring of blood-red light. He immediately flipped away and out past the door. With a flourish of his sword, Yang Wuji retreated as well. Naturally, there was no way Yan Nanfei would let them off. Just as he was about to chase them out, he suddenly heard a frightened cry and a loud shout. "Catch!" A human shadow flew towards him, her hair disheveled and her face bloody. It was Zhao Yazin. Fortunately, although Yan Nanfei's sword was quick, his eyes were even quicker. Just as his sword was about to pierce her, he pulled back at the last moment. With a miserable cry, Zhao Yazin fell against his body. At this moment, with a clanking sound, the steel door swung shut. From behind the door, a series of clanging sounds could immediately be heard as all 13 locks were once again locked. Aside from Hongxue, no one else in the world could reopen this door. Yan Nanfei stamped his feet. Not paying any attention to Zhao Yazin, who was leaning against him, he turned around and immediately charged out from the hole in the wall. "You take care of Miss Zhao. I will come back and meet you with Hongxue's head." Fu Hongxue's saber had already left his scabbard. What misgivings might he have? Now, the only thing he wanted to do was kill a person. Kill a person who killed other persons, too. The tip of his saber was still dripping with blood. Zhao Ping had fallen beneath his saber. Zhao Yazin had fallen by his side. All she needed to do was to lift her head, and she would see blood dripping from that blade. Blood dripped onto the stone floor, then splattered, breaking apart into a bloody mist. Fu Hongxue stood there without moving. He watched as the fresh blood dripped down from his saber. Unexpectedly, his saber remained unsheathed this time. Zhao Yazin forced herself to sit up. Her eyes remained locked onto that saber. She really wanted to see what was so remarkable and astonishing about this saber. When this saber killed people, it always seemed as though it had been blessed by all the divinities in heaven, or cursed by all the demons of hell. There must be many incredible magical inscriptions on this saber. She was disappointed. The long and narrow blade of the saber was crooked and curved. The edge of the saber was sharp. The blood groove was shallow. Aside from that pitch-black handle, this saber was no different from any other saber. Zhao Yazin lightly let out a breath. "No matter what, at least I've seen your saber. Should I feel grateful to this person who died to it?" Her words were very slow and very soft, as though she was speaking to herself. Naturally, she actually wasn't. She only wanted Fu Hongxue to know that if there was something she wanted to do, she would do it. But as soon as she said these words, she knew that she had misspoken. because she saw Fu Hongxue's eyes. Just a moment ago, his eyes had appeared to be very exhausted and very sorrowful. Now, they appeared even colder and sharper than the edge of his saber. Cao Yazan's body unconsciously shrunk back from him. She haltingly asked, "What did I say wrong?" Fu Hongxue stared at her, as though he were a wild panther staring at his prey, ready to throw himself at her at any moment. But after the flush from his face receded, he only let out a sigh. "We were all wrong. I was even more wrong than you." "Why should I blame you?" Cao Yazan tried a question. "You were wrong too," Fu Hongxue said. "You spoke the wrong words. I killed the wrong person." Cao Yazan stared at the corpse by his side. "You shouldn't have killed him." "Didn't he intend to kill you?" Fu Hongxue said. "If he really wanted to kill me, the corpse lying on the ground would be mine." He lowered his head. His eyes were filled with deep remorse and sorrow. Cao Yazan said, "Did he not kill you, in order to repay the kindness you showed him last time when you spared his life?" Fu Hongxue shook his head. "That definitely wasn't repayment. If you chopped off someone's hand, the only way they could repay you was by chopping off one of your own. Perhaps it was just a strange sense of gratitude. Gratitude for making him think things he had never before thought of. Gratitude for allowing him to retain a little bit of dignity and self-respect." Fu Hongxue understood his heart, but couldn't speak it aloud. Some complicated but subtle emotions could never be articulated by anybody. 3. All the blood on his saber had dripped off it. Fu Hongxue suddenly said, "This is the first time. It is also the last time." Cao Yazan said, "I know. This is the first time you've killed the wrong person, and it is the last time as well." Fu Hongxue coldly said, "You are wrong again. A person who kills other people can kill the wrong person at any time." Cao Yazan said, "Then what you are saying is a broken bar." Fu Hongxue said, "This is the first time you have seen my saber. It is also the last time." His saber finally entered the scabbard. Cao Yazan summoned up all her courage. Laughing, she said, "This saber isn't pretty at all. It's only a very ordinary saber." Fu Hongxue no longer wanted to continue speaking. But suddenly, he turned around. His pale face suddenly tightened. "How did you see this saber?" Cao Yazan said, "It was right in front of me. I'm not blind. How could I not see it?" Her words were very reasonable, but she forgot something. There was no light in here at all. Fu Hongxue started training his eyesight when he was 5. He spent day after day, year after day, in a hidden room that was dark and stuffy. After 10 years of training, he could see the ants and the mosquitoes in the hidden room. Now, he could obviously see Cao Yazan's face. Precisely because he had trained his eyesight, he knew that this wasn't something easy to do at all. How could Cao Yazan see his saber? Fu Hongxue's hand tightened around his saber anew. Cao Yazan suddenly laughed. "Maybe you haven't thought of this, but some people are born with night vision." Fu Hongxue said, "You are one?" Cao Yazan said, "Not only do I have good night vision, I can see straight into the hearts of others." Her laughter was very gloomy. "Right now, you must be wondering to yourself, am I the real Cao Yazan? Naturally, you won't think that I am a ghost or a monster, but I might be a spy sent to you by Gongsun and the others. Maybe I am a very famous female assassin, and I might even have betrayed Minai Uxin, because no one else knew that we were here." Fu Hongxue could not deny it. Cao Yazan looked at him. Tears appeared in her eyes. "Why do you never trust me?" "Why?" Fu Hongxue was silent. After a long time, he slowly said, "Perhaps you shouldn't be so clever." Cao Yazan said, "Why shouldn't I? How could a man like Ku Xiuqing find a stupid woman to bear his children?" Fu Hongxue shut his mouth. But Cao Yazan was unwilling to be silent. "My child will definitely be smart as well. Thus, I cannot allow him to be born without a father. I can't allow him to be regretful and in agony all his life." Fu Hongxue's face began to twitch. He understood her feelings. No one understood better than he did. He, too, was someone born without a father. A smart child born without a father is a tragedy in and of himself. After he grows up, he will definitely create many tragedies for others, because he will always have more hatred in his heart than love. Fu Hongxue finally sighed. "You can find a father on behalf of your child," Cao Yazan said. "I already found one." Fu Hongxue said. "Who?" Cao Yazan said, The underground cellar was very dark. In the middle of the darkness, Sir Oyazun's voice seemed to be coming from very far away. Only you are worth of being my child's father. Only you can guarantee that my child will live to grow up. Aside from you, there's definitely nobody else. Fu Hongxue stood there like a log in the darkness. He only felt as though every muscle in his entire body was gradually becoming hard. Sir Oyazun then did something which was even more shocking. She suddenly snatched Zhao Ping's scimitar. If you refuse to agree, I might as well kill the child in my belly right now. Fu Hongxue involuntarily cried out. Right now? Sir Oyazun said, right now, because I feel that he is about to come out soon. Although she was doing her best to restrain herself, her face was already becoming distorted with pain. The pain women go through in childbirth is one of the most unendurable forms of pain known to humanity. Fu Hongxue was even more shocked. But you said you were only 7 months pregnant. Sir Oyazun laughed. Children are disobedient by nature. A child in the stomach is even more so. When he wants to come out, no one can stop him. Although her laughter was pained, it was filled with an indescribable maternal love and tenderness. She softly continued, maybe it's because he is impatient to see the world. Maybe it's because he was made nauseous by the shaking those people gave him, and so broken bar. She no longer continued. The pain of childbirth had contorted her entire body, but her hand continued to tightly grip that scimitar, much as how Fu Hongxue's own hand continued to grip his own saber earlier. She clearly had already made up her mind. Fu Hongxue said, yeah, broken bar, I can be his foster father. It seemed as though he had to use all the strength in his body to say these words. His voice was hoarse. Sir Oyazun said, a foster father cannot take the place of a true father. Unacceptable. Fu Hongxue said, what do you want from me? Sir Oyazun said, I want you to let me be your wife. Only then will my child be your legal child. Her labor pains came again. She gritted her teeth and forced out a laugh. If you don't agree, I definitely won't blame you. I only ask that you bury our corpses within the graveyard of the Peacock Manor. Could it be that these were her last words? If Fu Hongxue did not agree, she would immediately die. Fu Hongxue was frozen with shock. He had run up against the most powerful opponents and the most dangerous crises, but he had never run up against such a tough problem. It could be said that Ku Xiuqing died because of him. It could be said that Sir Oyazun was Ku Xiuqing's wife. Ku Xiuqing's corpse had barely grown cold. How could he agree? How could he do something like this? But from another perspective, it could be said that since Ku Xiuqing died because of him, and since the 400-year-long fame of the Peacock Manor had been destroyed in one night because of him, leaving behind this last vestige of their bloodline in Sir Oyazun, no matter what sacrifices he might make, he must agree to protect her and let her smoothly give birth, and protect her child as he grew up. How could he not agree? If you ran up against something like this, what would you do? The time between each contraction grew steadily shorter. The pain became more acute. The sharp tip of the scimitar had already pierced her clothes. Fu Hongxue finally made a painful decision. I agree. Agree to be my husband? Yes. Was this the correct decision? Nobody can make that judgment. He himself could not either. Only, at this point in time, he had no other options. If you were him, would you do the same thing? Panting, groaning, crying a broken bar. Suddenly, all of it came to a halt. Everything became as silent as death. Then, there was suddenly a loud and clear sound of a baby crying. It pierced the sudden stillness, bearing with it a new life into the world. Fu Hongxue's hands were covered with blood, but it was the blood of life. This time, his hands brought life, not death. Life was hopping about. As he looked at his hand, he felt as though his heart was filled with a leaping energy as well. Zhao Ping's corpse remained there, fallen underneath his saber. In that moment, he had stolen away a man's life. But now, new life had been given birth to, a livelier, more dynamic life. His earlier pain and sadness had been dispersed by the cry from the infant. That bloody crime from earlier had been washed away by the blood of new life. In this brief period of time, he had taken away a life as well as welcomed a new one. This strange experience gave him a sudden, powerful, incomparably bright stimulus. His life had, without a doubt, become more lively and vigorous. He had been baptized by blood, much like how a phoenix was baptized by fire. He had gained a new life. Although this sort of experience is painful, it is part of growing up. It is the most precious, the most irreplaceable thing in the world, because this is life. The old die, the new are born. This is how life is. Only now did Fu Hongxue truly gain a new understanding of life, a correct understanding. He listened attentively to the sounds of life leaping about in his arms. He suddenly felt a sense of tranquility and joy which he had never before felt. The real purpose of life and living, does it not center around bringing new life into the universe? Cao Yuzhen asked him in a weak voice. Is it a boy or a girl? Fu Hongxue said, it is both a boy and a girl. His voice was extraordinarily happy. Congratulations, you've given birth to twins. Cao Yuzhen let out a satisfied sigh. A happy smile appeared on her weary face. I should congratulate you as well. Don't forget that you have become their father. She wanted to stretch out her hands to hold her children, but she was too weak. She couldn't even lift her arms. Just at this moment, there was suddenly a loud rumbling sound, as though Mount Shan had collapsed. Thousands of jin of stone tumbled down, striking the floor of the hidden cellar. Crushed stones shot out like arrows from the hole in the stone wall. And then, the sole way out of this place was sealed once more. Fu Hongxue almost lost control of himself and nearly let out a crazed howl. New life had suddenly been born. Could it be that he would need to meet up with death anew? Chapter 12. Between Life and Death. A fatal darkness, a deathly stillness. True fear is not being without light or sound. True fear is being without hope. The children were drinking milk. Only the sound of their suckling gave testament to the fact that life still existed here. But how long could their lives be preserved? Fu Hongxue was once more tightly gripping his saber, but caught in this deadly trap. Even his saber was useless to break them out of here. He should have gone and comforted Cao Yuzhen, but he didn't know what he should say. His mind was in turmoil. He had always viewed life and death very lightly, but he couldn't do so for the children. Although he wasn't their true father, they now had a miraculous connection to each other, a connection which was even more intimate than between children and their real fathers. Because he had personally delivered these children with his own two hands, it was almost as though they were a continuation of his own life. This sort of emotion was both complicated and subtle. The only reason why the world can continue to exist is because humanity is capable of this sort of emotion. Cao Yuzhen suddenly said, I heard Minai-Uxin say that you all were once trapped in here before. Fu Hongxue grunted in agreement. Cao Yuzhen said, since you were able to think of a way out in the past, you'll definitely be able to think of another way this time. Her eyes were shining with light, filled with hope. Fu Hongxue truly could not bear to extinguish that hope. But he also couldn't hide the truth from her. The reason we were able to escape last time was because there was a perfect weapon for smashing walls here. But now, this place was empty. Aside from the four of them, there was only a corpse. The corpse had already become cold and stiff. Sooner or later, they would be as well. But a gleam of hope remained in Cao Yuzhen's eyes. I often hear people say that your saber is an unparalleled weapon. Fu Hongxue looked at the saber in his hand. His eyes were filled with bitter hatred. This is a tool for killing people, not saving people. His bitter hatred wasn't directed towards others. It was directed towards himself. So long as he could save the children, he would be willing to do anything. But there was nothing he could do at all. Cao Yuzhen's hope finally died away. With an effort, she actually forced a smile to her face. At least we still have one hope, she consoled Fu Hongxue. Yan Nanfei wanted you to wait here. He will definitely return. Fu Hongxue said, if he was going to return, he would have done so by now. Now, even if he returned, he would definitely assume that we weren't inside. Cao Yuzhen shut her mouth. Of course she knew that Fu Hongxue's words were true. Yan Nanfei definitely wouldn't think of the possibility that they would have stayed here for so long. Even less would he think of Fu Hongxue being buried alive here. Based on Fu Hongxue's senses and reaction time, if anybody above them made the slightest movement, they should not have been able to hide it from him. But who could have imagined that right at that moment, He was busy delivering those children. Who would have imagined that there would be the sound of infants crying here? There are many things in the world which no one can predict at all. True events are sometimes more bizarre and fantastical than the events in legends. The children started to cry again. Cold sweat dripped down from the palm of Fu Hongxue's hand. He suddenly thought of something he could do for them. Something which he originally would rather die than do. But now, he definitely would have to do it. Zhao Ping was also a well-traveled, world-wise person. Such a person would definitely carry certain emergency tools on his body. Rifling through a dead man's possessions was something which made him nauseous just thinking about it. But now, he was already doing just that. He found a matchbook, a long roll of rope, a ralga gem designed to repel snakes and drive out disease, a bottle of medicine for cuts, a half-eaten piece of ginseng, a keychain, a pearl flower, a few ingots of gold, several banknotes for silver, and a letter. Pearls and yellow gold were things which people originally would do anything to get their hands on, to the point where they would even exchange their dignity for them. But right now, they had become worthless instruments. Could it be that this was a form of satire? After giving birth, a person would be weak. The children were drinking milk. Anyone would know that right now. That which Zhao Yuzhen needed the most was ginseng. Fu Hongxue quietly pulled out his saber, slicing away the parts which had been gnawed on. This was the first time he had pulled out his saber for something which was not alive, and the second time Zhao Yuzhen saw the saber. He did not care. The barriers which existed between him and her had been shattered during the childbirth. A miraculous relationship existed between the two of them as well. Now, Zhao Yuzhen didn't bring this up. She quietly accepted the ginseng, but her eyes were focused on that pearl flower. It was a peony flower. Every single pearl on it was perfectly formed and without flaw. A soft, sleek sheen. Ingenious workmanship. In the middle of the darkness, it appeared all the more beautiful and extraordinary. Light appeared in her eyes again. She was a girl after all. The glamour cast by jewels and pearls is something which no girl can resist against. Fu Hongxue hesitated for a while. Finally, he gave it to her. Perhaps he shouldn't have done this, but at this moment in time, why bother preventing her from enjoying this last bit of pleasure? This last bit of joy. Zhao Yuzhen laughed. Her laughter was like that of a child's. The children who were crying fell asleep. Fu Hongxue said, "You should sleep as well." Zhao Yuzhen said, "I can't fall asleep." Fu Hongxue said, "As long as you close your eyes, you will be able to fall asleep." He could tell that she was already very tired. She had lost too much blood, and had undergone too much suffering and fear. Her eyes finally closed. She immediately sunk deeper into the sweet, peaceful darkness. Fu Hongxue silently watched her. A mother sleeping with her infants should be something of great joy and beauty. But now a broken bar. He gritted his teeth and made up his mind to not allow himself to shed tears. Right now, he definitely would seek out every single thing which might help them escape. But although he had a pair of eyes that could see in the dark, he too was very tired right now. He lit the match. The first thing he saw was 8 characters on the seal of the letter. To Yan Nanfei, my little brother. You, Gongtsayu. Can it be that this letter was given by Gongtsayu, for Zhao Ping to deliver to Yan Nanfei? My little brother? What relationship, exactly, did they once have? Fu Hongxue mastered his curiosity. He folded the letter, then stored it in his clothes. Zhao Ping hadn't had the chance to deliver this letter. He hoped to still have a chance to see Yan Nanfei again, but he himself knew that the chance of that was really very small. To Fu Hongxue, aside from this letter and the ginseng, the things found on Zhao Ping's body were totally worthless. Because he had neglected something. There should not have been a pearl flower on the body of a man like Zhao Ping. But when he thought of this, it was too late. The mother and her children were still sleeping. A strange sound could suddenly be heard in the dark. Fu Hongxue once more lit the match. He saw a snake scurry out from a stone cupboard, scurrying towards the dim left corner of the room. They couldn't stand the smell of the ralga. The cellar had no ventilation. The air gradually grew stale. The smell of the ralga became especially powerful. Fu Hongxue immediately discovered something terrifying. Perhaps they wouldn't have to wait for hunger and thirst to kill them. They might suffocate to death, especially the children. The children didn't yet have the ability to adapt to the environment. At this moment, he discovered something else. Something which made him very happy. After several snakes wriggled into that dark corner, they disappeared. There must be a way out there. If there was a crack in that corner of the wall, was it recently created by his actions, or had it always been there, even though he wasn't a snake, and didn't know whether the outside of the wall was above ground or underground? As long as he had the opportunity, he definitely wouldn't let it slip. He struck out with his saber. By the time Zhao Yuzhen awoke, Fu Hongxue had been chopping at the stone wall for a long time. The cracks in the wall had gradually grown bigger, to the point where even the fattest of mice could get out. Unfortunately, they weren't mice. After the children woke up, they cried again. After they cried, they fell asleep once more. Zhao Yuzhen took off her outer clothes, laying it on the floor. She gently laid down the sleeping infants, then forced herself to stand. Fu Hongxue was gasping. His clothes were sopping wet. A sleeping person might not notice, but he had expended too much energy. The thinning air seemed to have become intolerable to him. He needed to escape immediately. He used even more energy. Suddenly, with a cracking sound, a notch appeared on the blade of his saber. This saber had become part of his body, even a part of his life. But he did not stop. Zhao Yuzhen bit off a piece of ginseng. She silently handed it to him. Fu Hongxue shook his head. The children need milk. You need it more than me, Zhao Yuzhen mournfully said. But if you collapse, who can live? Fu Hongxue gritted his teeth. Another notch appeared on his saber. Zhao Yuzhen's tears began to flow. This was originally a matchless, incomparable saber, even to overawe even the wind and the clouds and fill heroes with terror. But right now, it wasn't even as useful as a metal spade. What a cruel, sorrowful thing this was. Naturally, Fu Hongxue himself could understand this sentiment. He almost was really about to collapse. Zhao Yuzhen's hands suddenly silently moved towards him, filled with a sweet fluid. As soon as Fu Hongxue opened his mouth, the fluid flowed past his lips. An indescribably sweet and refreshing feeling filled his heart. This was her breast milk. Fu Hongxue had sworn an oath to never again shed tears. But at this moment, he couldn't prevent the hot tears from forcing their way out from his eyes. But just at this moment, something suddenly appeared in the middle of the crack on the stone wall. It was a sword. A scarlet-red sword. There was a cloth wrapped around the sword, upon which was written 10 words. These words were written with blood. I have not died yet. You cannot die yet either. The children began to cry again. A loud, sonorous boom stirred life awake. Sunlight filled the sky. The children finally saw the sun. Fu Hongxue only hoped that all the children of the world who were born into darkness would be able to live under the sun. I actually already left. I left 3 times. But you came back 3 times. I don't know why I came back either. At first, I thought that you definitely wouldn't be inside here. Yan Nanfei was laughing. Because even in my dreams, I never could have imagined that a day would come when Fu Hongxue would be buried alive by someone. There wasn't the slightest hint of ill will in his laughter. His heart was truly filled with joy. The last time I came, I was planning to leave as well. Why didn't you go? Because I suddenly heard a very strange sound. It sounded like someone eating fava beans. That was the sound of a saber starting to chip. Whose saber? Mine. Yan Nanfei's eyebrows rose and his mouth hung open. Shocked, he stared at Fu Hongxue, appearing as though he were even more shocked than he would be upon hearing that the world itself had chipped. But Fu Hongxue only laughed. My saber is only a very ordinary saber. Yan Nanfei said. Your hand. Fu Hongxue said. I still have my hand. Yan Nanfei said. So long as you still have your hand, even a chipped saber can kill people. Fu Hongxue's laughter suddenly disappeared. Where are they? Yan Nanfei sighed. With a bitter smile, he said, they aren't here. I'm afraid I don't know where they are. Far away, a carriage could be seen, but no one was there. Fu Hongxue asked, you rode a carriage here? Yan Nanfei chuckled. I rode a carriage here all 3 times. I hate walking. If I have a chance to ride, I definitely won't walk. Fu Hongxue looked at him. Only because you hate walking, not because of your leg? Yan Nanfei looked at him as well. He suddenly sighed. Why is it that I cannot hide anything from you? The infants were wrapped in Fu Hongxue's outer garments. Yan Nanfei was suppressing his amazement the entire time. He didn't ask about it because Fu Hongxue didn't bring it up at all. He knew that if Fu Hongxue didn't want to bring up something, you had best pretend you don't know about it. But Zhao Yazhen, smiling, was already calling out to him. Uncle Yan, why don't you come see our children? Yan Nanfei finally could no longer contain himself. He couldn't help but ask, your children? Zhao Yazhen glanced at Fu Hongxue out of the corner of her eyes. Can it be that he did not tell you? Yan Nanfei said. Tell me what? Zhao Yazhen smiled beautifully. One of these two children is surnamed Ku. The other is surnamed Fu. The boy is the heir to the bloodline of the Ku family. His name is Ku Xiaoqing. The girl was born first. Her name is Fu Xiaohong. Her eyes were filled with pride and satisfaction. We already agreed to this. We have already a broken bar. Her face blushed, and she lowered her head. Yan Nanfei looked at her, then looked at Fu Hongxue. He looked even more shocked than earlier. When he heard that the saber had chipped, Fu Hongxue had turned around. He pulled the clothes firmly around the children, then said, why don't you get on the carriage first? Zhao Yazhen already sat inside the carriage. Only then did Fu Hongxue and Yan Nanfei slowly walk over. The entire time, neither of them opened their mouths. After a long time, Fu Hongxue suddenly said, you didn't think it possible? Yan Nanfei forced to laugh. There are many things which are unthinkable in this world. Fu Hongxue said, you are opposed? Yan Nanfei said, I know that you definitely had your own difficulties which are hard to discuss. Perhaps a broken bar. Fu Hongxue interrupted his words. If time could go back, I would still have made the same choice. The children cannot be without a father. Somebody must be their father. Yan Nanfei's smile became genuine and optimistic. Aside from you, I really can't think of anyone else who could be their father. He walked very slowly, and his posture seemed to have become similar to that of Fu Hongxue's. He was coughing non-stop as well. Fu Hongxue suddenly came to a stop. Staring at him, he said, how many wounds did you take? Yan Nanfei said, not many. Fu Hongxue suddenly reached out and pulled his clothes open. Across his firm and strong chest, there were 2 fingernail markings, purple fingernail scratches, appearing as though they had been dyed into his skin. Fu Hongxue's pupils immediately contracted. This is the great violet palm of decapitating heaven and shattering earth? Yan Nanfei grunted in agreement. Fu Hongxue said, were you struck on the leg by the bone penetrating nail or the soul hunting needle? Yan Nanfei smiled bitterly. If it was the soul hunting needle, would I still be standing here? Fu Hongxue said, people came from the Xingqiu High Plateau of the western regions? Yan Nanfei said, just one person. Fu Hongxue said, was the person who came THxChemSci, or wielding? Yan Nanfei sighed. THxChemSci is just as merciless when making his move. This is a pun. THxChemSci means a man of great tenderness and affection, while wielding means a man without mercy. Fu Hongxue said, is the bone-penetrating nail still in your leg? Yan Nanfei said, the only thing in my leg is a hole. He stretched out his hands, revealing a hidden projectile that sparkled in his palm with cold light. If one were to choose the top 10 most deadly hidden projectile weapons in the world, beyond a doubt the bone-penetrating nail would be one of them. Yan Nanfei suddenly chuckled. Fortunately, my luck isn't half bad. He shot out 13 bone-penetrating nails. I only got hit by one, and it didn't hit a vital point. I was able to run a bit faster than they were. Otherwise, even if THxChemSci didn't kill me, Yang Wuji would have taken my life. His laughter seemed very cheerful. Let me tell you a little secret. Although my skill in killing isn't as good as yours, my skill in running for my life is #1 in the world. Fu Hongxue reached into his clothes. Only after Yan Nanfei was finished speaking did he remove his hand, pulling the letter out with it. Read it after you get in the carriage. Who will be driver? Me. Yan Nanfei laughed. I seem to remember that you didn't know how to drive in the past. Fu Hongxue said, now I do. Yan Nanfei said, when did you learn? Fu Hongxue stared at him. Suddenly, he said. Did you always know how to run for your life? Yan Nanfei thought a moment, then shook his head. Fu Hongxue said, when did you learn how? Yan Nanfei said, when I reached the point where I had no other choice but to do so. Fu Hongxue shut his mouth again. He believed that Yan Nanfei knew what he meant. When a man reached a point where he must do something, he would do it. The letter was very long, stretching across 3 scrolls of paper. Even before they got on the carriage, Yan Nanfei began to read. He was always an impatient sort. Fu Hongxue was very good at tamping down his curiosity. He didn't ask what the letter contained. Evidently, it was a very amusing letter. As Yan Nanfei's eyes were filled with a hint of laughter, filled with a sort of cynical laughter, he suddenly said, "It seems Hongxue really is a good person. He really cares very much about me." Fu Hongxue said, "Oh?" Yan Nanfei laughed. "He advises me to leave your company immediately, because you have become an almost pestilential creature. Anyone in your company will suffer misfortune." He laughed loudly, then said, "He even wrote out a list for me." Fu Hongxue said, "A list?" Yan Nanfei said, "The list includes the names of all the people who want to kill us. The people who want to kill you numbers 1 more than the people who want to kill me." Fu Hongxue coldly said, "1 person isn't very much." Yan Nanfei said, "Sometimes it isn't very much, sometimes it isn't very little. It depends on who this person is." His laughter was very unhappy. Strictly speaking, the person who wants to kill you can't even be considered a person. Fu Hongxue said, "What is he, then?" Yan Nanfei said, "He should at least be counted as 10 people." Fu Hongxue said, "Is it wielding of the THxChemSci High Plateau?" Yan Nanfei said, "Compared to this person, wielding can at most be considered a kid who just learned how to kill people." Fu Hongxue said, "Who is this person?" Yan Nanfei went into the carriage and closed the door, as though afraid that he himself might jump out. "It is a man who uses a saber, a very special saber." Fu Hongxue said, "What saber?" Yan Nanfei pulled the carriage door a little tighter shut. Only then did he say, 1 word at a time, "The demon decapitating saber of heaven's monarch." The carriage was very spacious. Sao Yuzin put the girl on her knee while holding the boy in her hands. Her eyes were focused on Yan Nanfei. Finally, she couldn't help but ask, "What type of saber is the demon decapitating saber of heaven's monarch?" Yan Nanfei forced out a laugh. "Strictly speaking, it cannot be considered a saber." Sao Yuzin said, "It should be considered 10. Yan Nanfei didn't directly respond. Instead, he asked her, "Did you seek Xiao Suwu's dagger?" Sao Yuzin thought for a moment, then nodded. "I saw him before. He always uses a dagger to trim his nails." Yan Nanfei said, "It would take at least 500 daggers like that to forge a single demon decapitating saber of heaven's monarch." Sao Yuzin sucked in a breath. 500 daggers? Yan Nanfei asked again, "Do you know how many people he's killed with that saber in a single blow?" Sao Yuzin said, 2 people, 3, 5. Yan Nanfei let out a sigh. With 1 chop, he killed 27 people. Every single one of their heads was split in 2. Sao Yuzin's countenance changed. She tightened her grip around the child in her bosom. Staring out the windows, she forced to laugh. "Are you trying to scare me?" Yan Nanfei smiled bitterly. "If you see that saber, you'll know whether or not I'm trying to scare you." He suddenly shook his head. "But naturally, you won't see it." "Heaven bless and protect us." "Don't let her see that saber." Sao Yuzin asked no more questions, because she saw something very strange. "Look, there's a wheel there." It wasn't at all strange for a carriage to have a wheel, but why would a wheel be rolling down the road by itself? Yan Nanfei couldn't help but stick out his head to take a look. The expression on his face changed as well. "This wheel is from our carriage." Before he finished speaking, the carriage began to tilt, slowly beginning to tilt towards one side of the road. Sao Yuzin cried out loud, "Look, why is the half a horse there?" Half a horse? How could there be such a thing as half a horse? What was even more frightening was that this horse was still galloping forwards on 2 legs. Suddenly, a storm of blood rain sprayed forth from it. That half horse ran for another 7 or 8 steps before falling down. Its liver, intestines, and internal organs fell onto the floor. Yan Nanfei shouted loudly, "Careful!" Before the sound of his voice dissipated, The carriage suddenly flipped around in midair, as though it had somersaulted. Yan Nanfei rushed over, gathered Zhao Yuzhen and the children to himself, then kicked the door open. A hand stretched out from outside the door. Fu Hongxue's voice could be heard. "Grab hold." Their two hands joined. Fu Hongxue gripped Yan Nanfei's hand, while Yan Nanfei held Zhao Yuzhen and the children. With an exploding sound, both the adults and the children flew out from the door. Next, with a thundering sound, the carriage crashed into a large tree by the side of the road. It disintegrated. High noon. The weather was sunny and cheerful. The sunlight was gorgeous. The fresh sunlight was shining on the road. But suddenly, a dark cloud covered it, blocking off the sun rays. It was as though even the sun couldn't bear to watch what had just happened. The carriage had been shattered into many pieces. The horse pulling the carriage had been chopped in twain. The back half was still attached to the carriage. The front half lay fallen by the road. What had happened just then? Zhao Yuzhen tightly held her children, not letting her children cry. Although she herself didn't know what had just happened either, she was simply too frightened. So frightened that she forgot all of her pain. Although she felt as though all the bones in her body had been ground to dust, fear had rendered her totally numb. And then, she couldn't help but vomit. A young woodcutter was standing by the side of the road. He couldn't help but vomit as well. He was just about to go on this road earlier, but he took a step back, because he saw this carriage charging this way. The carriage driver had a pallid face and appeared as though he wished he could make this carriage immediately travel 800 li. Can it be that this person is rushing to a funeral? The young, vigorous woodcutter was just about to curse at him, but before he even started, he saw a gleam of saber light. As a matter of fact, he couldn't tell if it was saber light or lightning. All he saw was a gleam of light fly out from within the forest, and then a broken bar. It suddenly split apart. The front half and the back half actually split apart. The front half of the horse was actually still running with its two front legs. What happened afterwards, the woodcutter didn't notice at all. He couldn't believe this was real. He hoped this was a dream, nothing more than a bad dream. But he was already vomiting. Chapter 13. Demon Decapitating Saber of Heaven's Monarch. What type of saber would be able to chop a horse in half at a blow? No one saw it. The saber light flew out from within the woods to the side of the road. The carriage was over 100 meters away from it. From here, neither man nor saber could be seen. Fu Hongxue stood guard in front of Zhao Yuzhen and the children. His eyes were still focused on that dense, forested area. His ashen pale face was so white, it was nearly translucent. Yan Nanfei let out a breath. He immediately asked, "Did you see that saber?" Fu Hongxue shook his head. Yan Nanfei said, "But you must know what saber that was." Fu Hongxue nodded. Yan Nanfei sighed. "It seems Gong Zayu's information is extremely accurate. Miao Danwang really has come." Tanwang means a heaven's monarch. Miao Danwang's saber would naturally be the demon decapitating saber of heaven's monarch. Fu Hongxue tightened his hands. He coldly said, "I'm afraid that plenty or people have come." Just at this moment, two large wagons rolled up on each side of the road, sealing off both sides. On top of one wagon was placed several wooden planks, upon one of which two people were playing chess. The second wagon had two people on top as well. One was trimming his nails, and the other was drinking. Each seemed to be very intent on what they were doing, and nobody so much as glanced aside. It seemed as though Fu Hongxue and Yan Nanfei didn't see them either. On top of the wagon to the right, there were several women seated. Some were old, some were young, some were embroidering, others were peeling melon seeds, some were even combing their hair. The oldest one was the ghostly granny. On top of the second wagon was an open wooden coffin, as well as a large copper pot which hung off a steel peg. It was said that the largest pot in the world was Shaolin's rice cooking pot. Shaolin had many monks who never tasted grease or oil, but worked hard all day. Naturally, the amount of rice they could eat was prodigious. If we estimate each monk as eating 5 bowls of rice per meal, how much rice would 500 monks eat? How large must the cooking pot be? In order to allow all those monks to be full, Yan Nanfei had gone to Shaolin once, just to see that pot. He was a curious man by nature. It seemed as though the red copper pot on the car was no smaller than that of Shaolin's cooking pot. What was even stranger was that there actually was someone in the pot, with a large face, a plump head and big ears. Many scars crisscrossed his forehead, dropping down from it like venomous snakes. They stretched down, all the way from his forehead to his mouth. They made his face, which looked as though it originally would seem very gentle, appear unspeakably foul and evil. The wagons were not moving very quickly. The copper pot gently waved, almost as though the man inside were resting in a hammock. The dark clouds went far away. The sun once more rose up, but Yan Nanfei's heart was sinking. But he absolutely had to force himself to maintain a smile. He muttered to himself, unexpectedly, THxChemSci didn't come after all. Fu Hongxue coldly said, if the first strike does not land true, fully withdraw. This is the long-established rule of the THxChemSci sect. Yan Nanfei's laughter seemed to become more cheerful. Aside from him, it seems as though everyone who should come has come. Everyone who shouldn't have come, came as well. He stared at the fatty with the scarred face in the copper pot. Smiling, he continued, Chef Hao, why did you come as well? The vipers on the fatty's face were wriggling. He was smiling, but his smile made his face look all the more vicious and cunning. I came to receive the remains. Yan Nanfei said. What remains? Chef Hao said. Any remains. I'll receive a dead horse's remains into my belly, and receive a dead man's remains into a coffin. The wagons came to a full stop. The chess players continued to play chess, the drinker was still holding his cup, and the ladies brushing their hair continued to brush their hair. Chef Hao laughed. Looks like all of you will be lucky diners today. Chef Hao's A5 spices horseflesh isn't something that just anybody can taste. Yan Nanfei said, your specialty dish doesn't seem to be the A5 spices horseflesh. Chef Hao said, it's hard to find the materials needed for my specialty dish. It's best if we just make do with the A5 spices horseflesh. After he finished speaking those words, he hopped out of his pot and got off the wagon. If the people present hadn't witnessed it with their own eyes, they would never have imagined that a fatty who weighed several hundred jin could move so quickly and agilely. He also had a large knife on him, a vegetable knife. Cao Yuzhen couldn't help but ask, is Chef Hao really a good chef? Yan Nanfei said, he's a sham. Cao Yuzhen said, then why do they call him a chef? Yan Nanfei said, because he likes to cook, and because he uses a vegetable knife. Cao Yuzhen said, what is his specialty dish? Yan Nanfei said, flame-roasted human hearts, lightly fried human wastes. The young woodcutter had just finished vomiting. As soon as he lifted up his head, he froze. Even in his wildest dreams, he never would have imagined that this place would have suddenly become so crowded. Today, all he had eaten was 2 steamed buns and a few salted vegetables. He had already thrown up everything, leaving nothing behind in his stomach. But after he took a few more glances, he began vomiting again, even more than last time. Chef Hao brandished his knife. With a single chop, he cut off a large piece of horse flesh and horse skin, then threw it into the copper pot. He chopped downwards with his right hand, and tossed meat upwards with his right. His hands moved up and down in tandem, his movements skillful and practiced. In the twinkling of an eye, the horse was chopped into over 130 pieces, as easily as others chop tofu. The horse flesh was in the pot. What about the 5 spices? Chef Hao wiped the blood from his saber off on the sole of his shoes, then walked back and opened up the coffin. The coffin was filled with all sorts of ingredients, oils, salts, sauces, vinegar, fennel, aniseed. A broken bar and the ingredients you could think of were in that coffin. Chef Hao mumbled to himself, we can use the broken, splintered carriage as kindling. By the time all the wood is burnt down, the flesh should be fully cooked. The man who was playing chess, Yang Wuji, suddenly said, no need to make my share too sodden and mashed. My teeth are strong. Chef Hao said, Taoist priests eat horse meat as well? Yang Wuji said, sometimes. I even eat human flesh, much less horse flesh. Chef Hao laughed. Priest, if you really want to eat human flesh, if you'll just wait a bit longer, there will be some ingredients here soon. Yang Wuji said, I have been waiting this entire time. I'm not impatient at all. Chef Hao laughed loudly, then glanced at Fu Hongxue out of the corner of his eyes. Human flesh enriches the blood. If you ate more human flesh, your face wouldn't be so pale. While laughing, he lifted the more than 300 jin heavy copper pot off the peg, then used the splintered wood from the crashed carriage to form a pile of firewood underneath the pot. The fire burned merrily, crackling and popping as the flames danced about. The children began to cry again. Sao Yazan could only quietly open up her garments and feed them milk again. Gong Sun, who was holding a wine cup in his hand, suddenly let out a breath. What fair white skin! Chef Hao laughed. What tender flesh! Ghostly Granny, who was cracking melon seeds, also let out a sigh. What adorable children! Fu Hongxue only felt his stomach contract. The blue veins began to bulge out on the hand he was holding his saber with, as though he had already pulled the saber out. But Yan Nanfei pressed his hand down. In a low voice, he said, "You can't make your move now." Of course, Fu Hongxue could also tell that now wasn't the time to move. Although these people were pretending to be leisurely, they were like a hornet's nest. As soon as they moved, the consequences would be unthinkable. But so what if they didn't move? If they continued to just waste time like this, would they really wait for them to eat horse flesh, then human flesh? Yan Nanfei's voice dropped even lower. He suddenly asked, "Do you know Dushiki? 8 lives and 8-fold courage?" Fu Hongxue shook his head. Yan Nanfei said, "Although this man isn't a great hero, in my opinion, he has a more heroic air than any real hero. I already arranged for him to meet with me in the heavenly fragrance tea house of the town up ahead. So long as we can find him, anything can be accomplished. I am very good friends with him." Fu Hongxue said, "That is your business." Yan Nanfei said, "My business is your business." Fu Hongxue said, "I don't know him." Yan Nanfei said, "But he knows you." The chess players were still playing chess. Everyone was still absorbed in their own activities, and paid them no mind at all, as though they were already dead men walking. Yan Nanfei asked again, "Are you a very reasonable person?" Fu Hongxue said, "Sometimes I am. Other times, I'm not." Yan Nanfei said, "Right now, are you at the point where you can't help but be reasonable?" Fu Hongxue said, "Seems so." Yan Nanfei asked again, "Can Zhao Yazan and her child be allowed to die?" Fu Hongxue said, "Number." Yan Nanfei let out a sigh. "As long as you can remember this, everything will be fine. Let's go." Fu Hongxue said, "Go? Go where?" Yan Nanfei said, "As soon as you hear me say the words, 'A little doggy, take Sao Yazan and her children onto that wagon and hide them in the coffin. I'll handle everything else." He chuckled. "Don't forget, my skill in running for my life is the best in the world." Fu Hongxue shut his mouth. Naturally, he understood Yan Nanfei's meaning. Right now, he had no leeway whatsoever. No matter what, he could not allow Sao Yazan and the children to fall into these people's clutches. On the wagon where Ghostly Granny was seated, there were 4 other women. Aside from her, all of them were young, and all of them weren't the slightest bit unattractive. That is to say, they were attractive. The most attractive one was combing her hair. Her long hair was both black and gleaming. Yan Nanfei suddenly said, "I hear that all in all, Miao Danwang has over 70 or 80 wives." Ghostly Granny said, "He has 80. He likes whole numbers." Yan Nanfei said, "I hear that no matter where he goes, he'll bring 4 or 5 of his wives with him, because at any place and at any point in time, he might have need for them." Ghostly Granny said, "He is a vigorous and energetic man. His wives are all very fortunate." Yan Nanfei said, "Are you one of them?" Ghostly Granny let out a sigh. "I very much want to be, but he scorns me for being too old." Yan Nanfei said, "Who says you are old? I think you are at least 10 years younger than that old granny who is brushing her hair." Ghostly Granny laughed loudly, while the countenance of the girl brushing her hair changed. She glared hatefully at him. Yan Nanfei grinned towards her. "Actually, you aren't very old either. Aside from Ghostly Granny, you are the youngest one here." By now, everyone could tell that he was causing trouble on purpose. But none of them could guess what he wanted or what he was planning. Everyone who was earlier purposefully staring away from him couldn't help but send a few glances his way. Next, he went to Chef Hao. "Aside from cutting meat and chopping vegetables, what else is this knife of yours good for?" Chef Hao said. "It can also kill people." The vipers on his face began to wriggle again. "There's not much of a difference between using a vegetable knife to kill people or a precious bejeweled saber to kill people," Yan Nanfei said. "It's a little different," Chef Hao said. "A little different?" Yan Nanfei ignored him. Turning around, he opened the coffin, then mumbled to himself, "I didn't expect you'd even have ground onions in here. I wonder if you have any hot peppers?" Chef Hao loudly said. "How is it different?" Yan Nanfei still ignored him. "Aha, here are the peppers." "Looks like this coffin really is just like a full kitchen." Chef Hao was originally sitting, but now he rose to his feet. "Why won't you speak? What, exactly, is the difference?" Yan Nanfei finally turned around. Smiling, he said, "I'm not sure what the difference is, exactly, either. All I know is that a 5 spices horseflesh braised in soy sauce should have some hot peppers in it." Carrying a string of peppers, he walked to the side of the copper pot. "There's pretty much nobody who dislikes spicy food. Anyone who doesn't eat spicy food is a little doggy." Chef Hao was so furious that his face had turned white with rage. Just at this moment, the sound of a horse neighing softly could be heard. Fu Hongxue had already carried Cao Yazhen, who was holding her children, onto the wagon. Cao Yazhen placed the children in the coffin. Fu Hongxue whipped the horses, while Yan Nanfei lifted up the frame upon which the copper pot was resting. Gongsun threw away his cup and rose. He loudly shouted, "Careful!" Before he finished saying the word, Cao Yazhen also burrowed into the coffin before covering them with the lid. With a flip of his hand, Yan Nanfei brandished about both the metal frame and the copper pot filled with boiling hot horseflesh. With a whooshing sound, he flew towards the opposite wagon. The boiling juice splattered everywhere. The healthy horse neighed in surprise, tipping over the wagon. The pieces of boiling hot horseflesh, along with the soup, shot out from the pot like arrows. Wherever it touched flesh, it immediately produced blisters. Covering their faces with their clothes, the people on the wagon flew to their feet. Fu Hongxue held his saber with his right hand while brandishing the whip with his left. He had already charged out from within the 2 overturned wagons. Xiao Suwu's body was in midair. He suddenly flipped over, concentrating all of his power in his right arm. His flying dagger was in his right hand. By the time Yang Wuji's body straightened, he had already seized his sword as well. Xiao Suwu's dagger had already left his hand. This time, he didn't make a single sound at all when he threw this dagger with all his force, and it was aimed towards Fu Hongxue's back. Although the wagons had been overturned, the space between them wasn't very wide. Fu Hongxue needed to use all of his concentration in driving the carriage, and he didn't have eyes in his back either. He had no idea at all that this lightning bolt-like dagger had shot towards his back. Even if he knew, he couldn't turn around and dodge it. Otherwise, even if he were able to avoid the dagger, he wouldn't be able to avoid the wagons up ahead. Just at this intolerable moment, his saber suddenly struck out from underneath his armpit. With a clanging sound, the pitch-black scabbard suddenly gave off sparks. The 4-inch-long flying dagger was knocked beneath the carriage. Yang Wuji's sword left his sheath very quickly. Like a jade maiden weaving a tapestry, he attacked from the sky. Fu Hongxue gripped the scabbard underneath his arm. He withdrew his saber with a backhand motion. A flash of saber light greeted the sword light. The saber and the sword did not actually intersect. Although the sword light was very quick, the saber light was even quicker. Yang Wuji's sword had already just barely touched Fu Hongxue's throat. If it went in another inch, it would have taken his life. But a miserable cry was suddenly heard and fresh blood spewed about. The sky was filled with a rain of blood. An arm suddenly fell down from the sky, with a sword still tightly gripped in it, an ancient, elegant sword of Damascus steel. When Yang Wuji's body descended, it fell straight into that boiling hot copper pot. In his entire life, this was the best chance he would ever have of killing Fu Hongxue. This time, his sword had almost pierced Fu Hongxue's throat. Only, he missed by an inch. The horse neighed loudly. The wagon was already traveling forward, past the overturned wagons. A sword light as red as crimson blood appeared. blocking off the road behind them. Fu Hongxue did not turn his head. He heard the sound of Yan Nanfei coughing. It seemed as though Yan Nanfei used all of his energy in this sword attack to cover their retreat. He didn't dare to turn his head. He was afraid that if he did, he would stay behind and fight shoulder to shoulder with Yan Nanfei in this deadly battle. Unfortunately, some people could not be allowed to die. They definitely could not. A cold night, a barren grave. A carriage came to a halt in the midst of a cluster of tombs. The stars gleamed with pulses. There was no trace of life in the wild, barren graveyard. Someone suddenly sat upright in the coffin on the cart. She had long hair and wore a cape, and her eyes were as liquid as autumn waters. Even if she was a ghost, she was definitely a beautiful female ghost. She was more than enough to mesmerize any scholar studying late at night. Her eyes flickered about, as though she was seeking someone. She wasn't looking for a scholar. She was looking for a man with a saber. Where did Fu Hongxue go? Why did he leave her here alone? Just as fear began to appear in her eyes, Fu Hongxue appeared by her side. A fog began to arise in the barren graveyard. The fog was pallid white, as pallid as Fu Hongxue's face. When she saw his pallid face, although Cao Yuzhen let out a sigh of relief, she was still very shocked. Why did we come here? Fu Hongxue didn't directly respond. Instead, he asked, what is the safest place to hide a bag of white mice? Cao Yuzhen thought for a moment, then said, in a large heap of white rice. Fu Hongxue asked, what is the best place to place a coffin, if one wants to avoid it being noticed? Cao Yuzhen finally understood his meaning. Hide white rice in the middle of a pile of rice. Hide a coffin in a graveyard. But there was something she still didn't quite understand. Why don't we go seek out Yan Nanfei and his friend, Dushiki? Fu Hongxue said, we cannot go. Cao Yuzhen said, you don't trust him? Fu Hongxue said, someone Yan Nanfei trusts, I too trust. Cao Yuzhen said, then why can't you go? Fu Hongxue said, the A Heavenly Fragrance Tea House is a largest tea house, and Dushiki is a famous man. If we meet with him, Gong Santa will find out within 6 hours. Cao Yuzhen let out a sigh. In a soft voice, she said, I didn't imagine that you are even more meticulous than I am in handling matters. Fu Hongxue evaded her gaze. From within his bosom, he withdrew a parcel wrapped in oil paper. This is a baked chicken I bought on the way. No need to give me any. I've already eaten. Cao Yuzhen quietly accepted it. As she opened the parcel, her tears began to fall onto the chicken. Fu Hongxue pretended to not see her tears. I already took a look around. There's no signs of human life within 2 or 3 li, and there's nobody following us. You must take a good nap. When dawn breaks, I need you to do something for me. Cao Yuzhen said, what? Fu Hongxue said, find out where Dushiki sleeps at night. When I go find him, I cannot allow anyone to see me. Cao Yuzhen said, we are still going to go find him? Fu Hongxue nodded. My appearance is too conspicuous. There's not many people who recognize you, and I know a few things about the art of disguise. Cao Yuzhen said, relax. I'm not the type of weak girl who can be blown down by a gentle breeze. I can take care of myself. Fu Hongxue said, do you know how to ride horseback? Cao Yuzhen said, a little. Fu Hongxue said, then go on horseback tomorrow morning. When you reach a place with people, immediately release this horse, then call for a carriage on the road. On the way back, you can buy a donkey. The people of the north are vigorous and hardy. There were plenty of women who ride donkeys. Cao Yuzhen said, I will definitely be extra cautious. Only, the children in a broken bar. Fu Hongxue said, I will take care of the children. Leave after you give them their fill of milk. Thus, you must get a good night's rest tonight. Cao Yuzhen said, and you? Fu Hongxue said, no need for you to worry about me. Sometimes, I can fall asleep while I am walking. Cao Yuzhen looked at him, her eyes filled with tenderness and a cherishing look, as though there were many things she wanted to say to him. But Fu Hongxue had already turned around, facing the dark earth, as though he had already fallen asleep. High noon. The children had finally fallen asleep. Cao Yuzhen had left 6 hours ago. Fu Hongxue sat in the shadow of a tomb. He stupidly stared at a tombstone in front of him. He hadn't moved in a long time. What was he thinking about? What type of people were buried in these tombs? How many of them were nameless heroes? How many were lonely wanderers? If people were lonely while living, wouldn't they be even more lonely when dead? After he died, would there be anybody to bury him? Where would he be buried? Who can answer these questions? Nobody. Fu Hongxue let out a long breath. He slowly rose to his feet and saw a donkey walk up the side of the hill. A thin, weary donkey. An ordinary, emaciated woman. Watching her, Fu Hongxue couldn't help but feel pride in his disguising skills. Finally, Cao Yuzhen had safely returned. No one recognized her, and no one had followed her. As soon as she saw Fu Hongxue and the children, her eyes shone. Just like every worthy mother and virtuous wife in the world, she first went over and kissed her children. Then, she took out a parcel wrapped in oil paper. "This is the roast chicken and beef I bought at the market. No need to share it with me. I've already eaten." Fu Hongxue quietly accepted the parcel. Her fingertips gently brushed across his hand. His hand was ice cold. If a person's hand was ice cold despite staying underneath a fierce sun for 6 hours, they must have things on their mind. Looking at him, Cao Yuzhen said in a soft voice, "I know that you must have been worrying about me, so I came back as soon as I got the news." Fu Hongxue said, "You've already found out where Dushiki a broken bar?" Cao Yuzhen interjected, "No one knows where Dushiki sleeps at night. Even if someone knew, they weren't willing to tell me." Dushiki was definitely a person who liked making friends. Naturally, he had many friends, Cao Yuzhen said. "But I overheard news about something else." Fu Hongxue was listening. Cao Yuzhen said, "Although he has many friends, he has quite a few enemies as well. The most fierce one amongst them is named Hukun. Everyone in the city knows that Hukun plans to kill Dushiki on the first day of the next month. In addition, it seems he is very assured of victory." Fu Hongxue said, "It seems today is the 28th. Cao Yuzhen nodded. "So I thought to myself that Hukun must know more about Dushiki's movements these days than anyone else. If you want to find information on someone, it is far better to seek out his enemies than his friends." Fu Hongxue said, "Did you seek out Hukun?" Cao Yuzhen said, "I did not." She smiled, then continued, "But you can go seek him out. In fact, you can go seek him out openly and brazenly, with no need to fear Gongsun and the others finding out. In fact, it might be even better if they did find out." Her smile was warm and sweet. She looked like a warm, sweet little fox. Fu Hongxue looked at her. He suddenly understood her meaning. Admiration immediately appeared in his eyes. Cao Yuzhen said, "The largest tea house isn't the A Heavenly Fragrance tea house. It is the A Ascendant Immortal tea house." Fu Hongxue said, "Hukun often goes there?" Cao Yuzhen said, "He goes there every day, almost from dawn to dusk, because he opened the A Ascendant Immortal tea house." After the sky darkened, Fu Hongxue left Cao Yuzhen and the children behind in a mountainside graveyard. How could he feel safe leaving them behind in such a ghastly, desolate, dark, terrifying place? Perhaps it was because that place was too dark, too desolate. There was definitely no one who would imagine them hiding there, and so he felt at ease. Was he truly certain of this decision? But he definitely had to arrange many matters for them, so as to make sure they would live peacefully and happily. He knew that he definitely couldn't always be by their side. No person in the world could always be by the side of another person. No matter how long people are with one another, in the end they will separate. If it wasn't separation caused by death, it would be separation in life. He suddenly thought of Minayuxin. He was forcing himself to be controlled this entire time, forcing himself not to think of her. But on this unpopulated hillside, in this quiet, lonely night, the more one should not think of something, the more easy it was to think of it. Thus, not only did he think of Minayuxin, he also thought of Yan Nanfei. He thought of how, when they parted, Minayuxin stared into his eyes. He also thought of the sound of Yan Nanfei's dry, rough coughs, and his blood-red sword. Where were they now? Were they at the ends of the world, or in a furnace? Fu Hongxue didn't know. He didn't even know where he was. Was he in a furnace, or at the ends of the world? He tightly gripped his saber. He knew that this saber was tempered from within a furnace. Could it be that he himself was like a saber being tempered within a furnace? Chapter 14. First pay, then kill. Hukan stood next to the upper railing of the Ascendant Immortal Tea House. He felt very satisfied with everything. This was a high-class, elegant place. The decorations were beautiful, and the furnishings were exquisite, and every chair and table was made using excellent hardwood. The bowls and the cups were made from the famous Jingdezhen porcelain of Jiangnan. The clients who came here to drink tea and wine were, generally speaking, lofty and lordly people. Although the entrance fee here was at least twice as high as that of any other place, he knew that the customers here wouldn't care, because that is the nature of extravagance. Normally, he always liked to stand here. He'd watched as these noble, lordly people walk about beneath him, always making him feel as though he were above all of them. Although he wasn't even 5 feet tall, this gave him the feeling that he was a head taller than everybody else. Thus, he liked this sort of feeling. He also liked lofty, lordly matters, just like how he loved power. The only thing which irritated him slightly was that fearless Dushiki. When this person drank alcohol, he was fearless. When he was gambling, he was fearless. And when he was fighting, he was even more fearless, as though he really had 9 lives. Even if he does have 9 lives, I definitely cannot allow him to live past the start of next month. Unfortunately, he wasn't really certain that he would be victorious. Whenever he thought of this, he would always feel a bit irritated. Fortunately, just at this moment, the person he was waiting for arrived. The person he was waiting for was named a king. He had spent over 30,000 kills of silver to invite this man to come from the capital to kill Dushiki. The name a king was not a very famous, well-recognized name in the martial world. This was because the things he did precluded him from becoming too famous. He didn't want prestige. He wanted wealth. He specialized as an assassin for hire. The minimum price he accepted for any mission was at least 30,000 kills of silver. This is an ancient, mysterious profession. A person in this profession being ostentatious or making a name for himself was a person who was breaking some cardinal rules. But within their own circle, the king was definitely a famous man, and the price he commanded was higher than that of others. Because he never failed to assassinate his target. The king was 7 feet tall, dark-skinned and gaunt, with a bright pair of eyes that were as keen as a hawk's. Although the clothes he wore were form-fitting and were made from the best of materials, they weren't colorful at all. He had a cold, quiet attitude. In his hands, he carried a dark, grey bundle that was long and narrow. His hands were dry and steady. All of this was very much in keeping with his status, making others feel that no matter how high a price he charged, he was be worth it. Hukan appeared to be extremely satisfied as well. The king found a seat in a corner and sat down. He didn't even raise his head up to take a single look. His movements needed to be clandestine and secretive. He definitely could not allow others to notice any hint of a relationship between himself and Hukan. Even less could he allow others to find out what he was here for. Hukan let out a breath. Just as he was about to return to the secret room behind him to drink 2 cups or celebratory wine, he suddenly saw a pale-faced man walk in. His walking posture was extremely bizarre and unusual, and he tightly gripped the saber in his hand. A pitch-black saber. The saber was still sheathed, but he himself seemed like a naked blade, ruthless and sharp. His eyes were like the edges of a saber as well. He glanced around the room, then his gaze fixed onto the king. The king lowered his head, drinking his tea. There was a cold sneer playing across the lips of this stranger. He found a seat nearby and sat down. Suddenly, with a cracking sound, an excellent wooden chair cracked underneath his weight. He wrinkled his forehead as he supported himself with one hand on the table. Again, with a sudden cracking sound, that wooden table, worth at least 20 silvertals, was shattered into many fragments. By now, anyone could tell that he came here to cause trouble. Hukan's pupils were contracting. Can it be that this person had also been invited here from outside, except by Dushiki to deal with him? His bodyguards and hired thugs were just about to charge out. but with a gesture, Hukan stopped them. He could already tell that this stranger definitely could not be handled by the likes of them. Since the king had arrived, why not use this opportunity to display his skills? Hukan was a businessman, a very intelligent businessman. Whenever he spent even a single ingot of silver, he'd expect to earn itself back. In addition, perhaps this stranger hadn't come here for him. Perhaps he had come here for the king. This stranger was, of course, Fu Hongxue. The king was still drinking tea, his head lowered. Fu Hongxue suddenly walked to him. He coldly said, "Stand up." The king didn't move. He didn't speak either. But a majority of the other customers had already quietly slipped away by now. Fu Hongxue repeatedly himself, "Stand up." The king finally lifted up his head. He seemed to have just noticed this man. "It's more comfortable to sit than to stand." "Why should I stand up?" Fu Hongxue said. "Because I like your chair." The king looked at him. He slowly put down his tea, slowly stretched out his hand, picking up the bundle on the table. The bundle was, without a doubt, filled with his weapons. Hukan's hands tightened. His heart rate suddenly sped up. He liked to watch people kill other people. He also liked to watch people bleed. Over the past 5 years, there hadn't been many things that could excite him. Not even women did the trick. Killing people was the very last thing which could stimulate him. But he was disappointed. The king rose to his feet. He picked up his bundle, then quietly stepped aside. He always acted in a very careful, prudent manner. Naturally, he wouldn't make any moves in front of so many people. Hukan suddenly said, "Today, my humble shop will close early. Aside from those who have business with me, everyone else, please leave." Thus, those who wanted to watch the fun had to leave. Suddenly, only 2 people were left in the main hall. The king continued to sip his tea, head lowered. Fu Hongxue's head was raised, and he was staring at Hukan, stationed at the upper flowered railing. Hukan said, "You have business with me?" Fu Hongxue said, "You are Hukan?" Hukan nodded. He smirked. "If Dushiki told you to come here to kill me, you found the right person." Fu Hongxue said, "If you are looking for someone to kill Dushiki, you found the right person as well." Hukan was obviously caught off guard. "You?" Fu Hongxue said, "I don't look like a killer." Hukan said, "You two have a feud?" Fu Hongxue said, "It isn't necessary to be feuding with someone to kill them." Hukan said, "Why do you usually kill people?" Fu Hongxue said, "To make myself happy." Hukan said, "What does it take to make you happy?" Fu Hongxue said, "A few tens of thousands of tals of silver usually make me happy." Light shone in Hukan's eyes. "I can make you happy. Will you go kill Dushiki for me today?" Fu Hongxue said, "I've heard it said that you aren't a very stingy person." Hukan said, "Are you certain you can kill him?" Fu Hongxue said, "I can guarantee that he won't live beyond the start of the next month." Hukan laughed. "I am very happy to help my friends be happy as well. Only, I'm afraid you came a bit too late." Fu Hongxue said, "You already found someone else?" Hukan glanced at the king out of the corner of his eye, smiled, and nodded. Fu Hongxue coldly said, "If he's the man you found, then you found the wrong man." Hukan said, "Oh?" Fu Hongxue said, "Dead man can't kill anybody." Hukan said, "He's a dead man?" Fu Hongxue said, "If he isn't a dead man, he should have killed me by now." Hukan said, "Why?" Fu Hongxue said, "Because if you can't make me happy, I'll definitely go seek out Dushiki." Hukan said, "If you seek out Dushiki, you'll tell him to be on guard against him." Fu Hongxue said, "I will help Dushiki kill him." Hukan said, "First kill him, then kill me." Fu Hongxue said, "If Dushiki is alive, then you must die." Hukan said, "Thus, he should kill you right now." Fu Hongxue said, "Unfortunately, a dead man can't kill anybody." Hukan let out a sigh, then turned towards the king. "Did you hear what he just said?" The king said, "I'm not deaf." Hukan said, "Then why don't you kill him?" The king said, "I'm not happy." Hukan said, "What will it take to make you happy?" The king said, 50,000 tals. Hukan appeared startled. Dushiki only costs 30,000 tals, but he costs 50,000? The king said, "Dushiki doesn't know me." "He knows me." Hukan said, "Therefore, you can ambush Dushiki, but you cannot ambush him." The king said, "In addition, he's holding a saber, so my risk is greater." Hukan said, but you are still certain that you can kill him? The king coldly said, I've never missed the mark on my target. Hu Kun let out a sigh. Fine, kill him. I'll give you 50,000 kills. The king said, pay first, then kill. Brand new 1,000 banknotes, a total of 50 of them. The king counted them twice, as though he were a miser. He wet his fingers with his saliva as he counted, then wrapped them up in a square cloth and stored them in the money pouch hanging off his belt. Money which was earned through blood and sweat is always especially precious. Although he rarely sweated while earning money, he often shed blood. Blood is naturally more valuable than sweat. Fu Hongxue coldly watched him, no expression on his face at all. But Hu Kun smiled, and suddenly said, you must be a very rich man already. The king didn't deny it. Hu Kun said, you are married. The king shook his head. Hu Kun's smile became even more friendly. Why don't you store the money here with me? I'll give you interest, 3% interest. The king shook his head again. Hu Kun said, you aren't willing? Can it be that you distrust me? The king coldly said, the only person I trust is myself. He patted his money pouch. All of my money is here. There's only one way it can be taken. Hu Kun naturally did not dare to ask, but the look in his eyes as good as asked, what way? The king said, by killing me. He stared at Hu Kun. This belongs to whoever kills me. Would you like to give it a try? Hu Kun laughed. His laughter was very forced. You know I won't try, because he broken bar. The king coldly said, because you don't have that much courage. He suddenly turned towards Fu Hongxue. How about you? If I kill you, is there anything which you will leave behind for me? Fu Hongxue said, only a lesson. The king said, what lesson? Fu Hongxue said, don't keep the weapon with which you kill people wrapped inside a bundle. A person who intends to kill others, as well as a person who is about to be killed, is impatient. They won't wait for you to unwrap your bundle. The king said, that is a very good lesson. I will keep it in my mind at all times. He suddenly laughed. Actually, I'm also an impatient sort of person. If I had to unwrap my bundle in order to kill people, I'd go crazy with impatience. He finally stretched out his hands and unwrapped his bundle. What sort of weapon was in that bundle? Hu Kun really wanted to see what weapon he used. His gaze unconsciously affixed itself upon it. Who would have thought that before the bundle was unwrapped, the king already made his move. His weapons for killing weren't hidden within the bundle. His entire body, from top to bottom, was covered with weapons. With a clanging sound, 7 cold rays of light shot out from his waist and his clothes. From the back of his collar shot out 3 flowery crossbow bolts. 2 iron lotus flowers flew out from his hands. 2 sharp knives shot out from the tip of his boots as well. An iron lotus flower is an ancient Chinese weapon which looks like a flying claw, a flexible metal chain attached to an iron claw. As soon as the hidden projectile weapons flew out, he jumped up into the air, both legs striking out in rapid succession. In the blink of an eye, he had used 4 different types of lethal weapons. That eye-grabbing bundle of his was still placed on the table. This was truly outside of other people's expectations. Even Hu Kun was greatly shocked. This technique alone was worth him spending 50,000 kills of silver for. He was certain that the king wouldn't miss his mark this time either. But he was wrong, because he did not know that this pallid-faced stranger was Fu Hongxue. Fu Hongxue had already pulled out his saber, a saber without equal in all the world. Unimaginable, unthinkable saber techniques. No matter how vile the hidden projectile might be, or how devious the plot, once they met with this saber, it was as though ice and snow had met the sunlight. A flash of saber light, a series of light clinking sounds, like small golden bells being sounded. All the hidden projectiles in the air fell to the floor. Every single one of them had been cut in half, right down the middle. Even a master craftsman using a carving knife to slowly whittle away at them might not be able to make such neat, perfect cuts. Only after the saber light disappeared could the blood be seen. Blood, flowing down from the face to King's face. A saber cut had been left on his face, carving down from the middle of his eyebrows, all the way down to his nose. If 30% more force had been used in that chop, without question his head would have been split in 2 as well. The saber was already sheathed again. Fresh blood flowed down from his nose. It entered his mouth, tasting hot, salty, and bitter. Every single muscle onto King's face had become contorted with pain. but his body didn't move. He knew that his career as an assassin had just come to an end. This was a secretive line of work. One must silently, invisibly kill his target, then silently, invisibly disappear. Nobody who had such a saber wound on his face could be suited for this line of work. Fu Hongxue stared at the saber wound. He suddenly waved his hand. You, go. To King's lips were twitching as well. Where shall I go? Fu Hongxue said, so long as you don't kill others, you can go anywhere you wish. To King said, we're broken bar, why aren't you killing me? Fu Hongxue said, you insisted on 50,000 tals before you would kill me. For me to kill you, I would at least demand 50,000 tals as well. He coldly continued, I've never killed for free either. To King said, but I have more than merely 50,000 tals on me. If you killed me, they would belong to you. Fu Hongxue said, that's another matter entirely. I adhere to the same rule, first get paid, then kill. Rules are founded on principles. Regardless of the nature of one's profession, if one wishes to be successful, one must follow their principles. The King no longer opened his mouth. He silently removed 2 stacks of banknotes from his money pouch, a total of 50 notes. Once again, he carefully counted the notes twice, then placed them on the table. Lifting his head up, he glanced at Hu Kun. This is still yours. Hu Kun was coughing. The King said, you can give him 50,000 tals and tell him to kill me. Hu Kun suddenly stopped coughing. How much more do you have on you? The King closed his mouth. Hu Kun stared at him. Light shone in his eyes. The King had already lifted up the bundle on the table, and was slowly heading out. Hu Kun suddenly said loudly, kill him, I'll pay 50,000 tals. Fu Hongxue coldly said, if you want to kill this person, you have to make the move yourself. Hu Kun asked, why? Fu Hongxue said, because he is already injured. He no longer has the capability to defend himself. Hu Kun's 2 hands tightened on the railing. With a thudding sound, 3 flying daggers slammed into the wooden railing. The flying daggers came from the King's bundle. The bundle was filled with weapons as well. The King coldly said, I never kill people for free, but for you, I am willing to break this rule and make an exception. Do you want to try me? Hu Kun's face had changed long ago. He really could not guess how many more weapons remained in the bundle, and how many more remained on the King's person. But he could already tell that regardless of what type of hidden projectiles the King might use, all that the King needed was a single one in order to kill him. The King finally left. As he reached the doorway, he suddenly turned around and stared at Fu Hongxue, then stared at Fu Hongxue's saber. It was as though he had never seen a person like this, never seen a saber like this. He suddenly asked, your honorable surname? Fu Hongxue said, my surname is Fu. The King said, Fu Hongxue. Fu Hongxue said, correct. The King lightly sighed. Actually, I should have thought of the possibility that it was you long ago. Fu Hongxue said, but you didn't think? The King said, I didn't dare to think. Fu Hongxue said, didn't dare? The King said, if a person thinks too much, he won't kill people anymore. It was dark outside already. There were no stars, no moon. As soon as the King left, he disappeared into the darkness. Hu Kun let out a long sigh, then mumbled to himself, why didn't you kill him? Aren't you afraid that he will reveal your secret? Fu Hongxue said, I have no secret. Hu Kun said, are you no longer interested in killing Dushiki? Fu Hongxue said, killing people isn't a secret. Hu Kun let out a sigh. There are 80,000 tals worth of banknotes on the table. Kill Dushiki, and they will be yours. Fu Hongxue said, first pay, then kill. Hu Kun forced out a laugh. You can take them away now. Fu Hongxue took the banknotes, also counting them twice, before slowly asking, do you know where Dushiki is right now? Hu Kun naturally knew. In order to discover his whereabouts, I've spent 15,000 tals. Fu Hongxue lightly said, killing someone was always a very wasteful thing. Hu Kun let out a sigh. He watched as he put the banknotes into his clothes, then suddenly asked, killing people isn't a secret? Fu Hongxue said, no. Hu Kun said, you aren't afraid of killing in front of a multitude of people? Fu Hongxue said, killing can be done at any place. Hu Kun laughed. He really laughed. Then you can go find him right now. Fu Hongxue said, where is he? Hu Kun narrowed his eyes. Going all out. Fu Hongxue said, going all out? Hu Kun said, going all out, gambling-wise, alcohol-wise. I can only hope that he hasn't yet lost everything, and that he hasn't yet drunk himself to death. Not only was Dushiki winning, he was very sober as well. Whenever a person is winning, he is always very sober. Only losers will be muddle-headed. He was in the middle of shuffling the cards, 32 wooden domino cards. Each and every one, he seemed to control. Even the dice seemed to be obeying his commands. He wasn't playing any tricks or using any sleight of hand. When a person's gambling luck came upon him, there is no need at all to cheat. Earlier, he had used a long 13 card and taken money from everyone at the table. By now, it seemed as though he had won 20,000 tls. Originally, he definitely could have won some more. Unfortunately, the people playing with him had gradually diminished, because everyone's money pouch was now empty. He hoped that 1 or 2 fresh faces would enter. Just at this moment, he saw a stranger with an ashen face walk in. Fu Hongxue was watching him shuffle the cards. His hands were enormous and very strong. Dushiki took the part of the bank again. Out of 4 hands, he won everybody's money on 2 of them, but only made a total of 200 or so tls. Everybody else at his table seemed to be without vitality already. In a casino, money is blood. How could people without blood have vitality? Did this stranger with such a pale face have a flourishing flow of blood in his veins? Dushiki suddenly raised up his head and smiled at him. Friend, would you like to play a few rounds as well? Fu Hongxue coldly stared at him. Just 1 hand, Dushiki said. Only 1 hand. Victory or defeat, to be determined in 1 hand, then? Fu Hongxue said. Right. Dushiki laughed. Great. Only this sort of gambling is really fun. He straightened his waist. All of the joints in his body immediately cracked, and all the muscles underneath his robe moved hither and to without stopping. This was the result of 18 years of bitter training. He was 8 feet, 2 inches tall. He had large shoulders, but a slender waist. Supposedly, he could snap a cow's head with 1 head. Everyone who saw him couldn't help but gaze upon him with awe and veneration, as though they were officials gazing upon the emperor. The 80 banknotes had already been taken out. Brand new banknotes, in a pale white hand. Dushiki said, "How much do you have?" Fu Hongxue said, 80,000. Dushiki let out a light breath. His eyes were so bright, it was as though 2 torches had been lit in them. 80,000 tls on 1 hand, Fu Hongxue said, regardless of who wins. Only 1 hand, Dushiki said. Unfortunately, I don't have that much. Fu Hongxue said. No harm. Dushiki said. By no harm, do you mean that isn't a problem? Fu Hongxue nodded. Dushiki laughed. Did you steal this money? Is that why you don't care? Fu Hongxue said. They weren't stolen. They were used to purchase a life. Dushiki said. Whose life? Fu Hongxue said. Yours. The smile on Dushiki's face froze. Everybody nearby had clenched their fists. Some had clenched their sabers. But Fu Hongxue didn't even glance at him. If I lose, these 80,000 tls are yours. If you lose, you must leave with me. Dushiki said. Why must I leave with you? Fu Hongxue said. Because I don't want to kill you here. Dushiki laughed again, but his laughter was very forced. If you lose, are you still going to kill me? Fu Hongxue said. No matter what, I must kill you. Dushiki said. What you seem to be saying is that regardless of who wins, we'll still stake our lives and fight each other. Only, there are too many people here, all of whom are my people, and so you want to fight elsewhere. Fu Hongxue coldly said. I don't want to kill too many people. Dushiki laughed. You seem to be certain that you can kill me. Fu Hongxue said. If I wasn't certain, why would I come? Dushiki laughed loudly. Fu Hongxue said. 80,000 tls of silver can be used for many things. After you die, your friends and brothers can use them. Suddenly, a knife chopped out from behind them, aimed at the back of his head. Fu Hongxue didn't leave, but Dushiki had already seized the hand wielding that knife. With a clanging sound, the knife dropped to the floor. With a cracking sound, the blade of the knife split. Dushiki's face sunk. In a fierce voice, he said, "This affair has nothing to do with any of you. You are only allowed to watch, not to interfere." No one dared to move. Dushiki laughed again. "You are all my good brothers. First watch me win these 80,000 tls of silver." With one pull, he tugged open his jacket, revealing his copper-like chest. "How shall we gamble?" Fu Hongxue said. "You choose." Du Shiki said, "We'll play Pei Ai Gao." One flip of the cards, two eyes staring at it. "This way is the best." Fu Hongxue said. "Fine." Du Shiki said, "Shall we still use this set of cards?" Fu Hongxue nodded. Du Shiki blinked his eyes. "Do you know how many matches I've won with this set of domino cards?" Fu Hongxue shook his head. Du Shiki said, "I've won over 60 hands. My luck is extremely good with this set of domino cards." Fu Hongxue said, "Even the best of luck will have to turn at some point." Du Shiki stared at him. "You are self-assured when it comes to killing. You are certain of winning in gambling as well?" Fu Hongxue lightly said, "If I wasn't certain, why would I gamble?" Du Shiki laughed loudly. "This time, you're wrong. When it comes to gambling, not even divinities can be certain. In the past, I've also seen many people like you who were certain of winning. By now, they've also lost so much that they've hung themselves." The 32 domino cards were divided into 4 rows, with 8 cards in each row. Du Shiki pushed out one row. "There's only the 2 of us gambling, and both of us are starting with a blank slate." Fu Hongxue said, "I understand." Du Shiki said, "So we should gamble with 4 cards." Fu Hongxue said, "Fine." Du Shiki pushed forwards 4 cards with 2 fingers. "If the dice roll is odd, the first set of cards is yours." Fu Hongxue said, "You shuffled the cards. I'll roll the dice." Du Shiki said, "Fine." Fu Hongxue picked up the dice. Casually, he tossed them out. 7. Odd. Du Shiki said, "I'll take the second set." 2 sets of wooden domino cards. With a cracking sound, they came together, then separated. Light shone in Du Shiki's eyes. A smile appeared on his lips. His friends all let out a breath as well. Everyone could tell that he had a very good set of cards. Fu Hongxue only coldly said, "You lose." Du Shiki said, "How do you know that I've lost?" "Do you know what cards I am holding?" Fu Hongxue said, "You have a heaven card, and a human card, forming a heaven's bar." Astonished, Du Shiki stared at him. "Did you look at your own cards?" Fu Hongxue shook his head. "I don't need to look. My cards form a mixed 5. Du Shiki couldn't help but reveal his cards. He really did have a mixed 5. A mixed 5 just so happened to defeat a heaven's bar. Du Shiki was stunned. Everyone was stunned. And then, there was a commotion. "This brat must have cheated." He marked the cards. Fu Hongxue smirked. "Who do these cards belong to?" Du Shiki said, "Mine." Fu Hongxue said, "Have I touched the cards at all?" Du Shiki said, "Number." Fu Hongxue said, "Then how could I have cheated?" Du Shiki let out a sigh. He smiled bitterly. "You didn't cheat. I'll go with you." Another commotion. Those who gripped their daggers earlier wanted to use their sabers again. Those clenching their fists once more wanted to punch out. Du Shiki said in a fearsome voice, "Although I've lost at gambling money, I haven't lost yet in gambling lives." "What are you guys kicking up a racket about?" The disturbance immediately calmed. No one dared to open their mouths. Du Shiki laughed again, and his laughter was still very cheerful. "Actually, you should all know that I definitely won't lose when it comes to gambling lives." Fu Hongxue said, "You are certain of yourself?" Du Shiki smiled. "Even if I'm not certain, I have 9 lives. At most, you can only take 1 away." "No stars, no moon, no lanterns." Du Shiki suddenly let out a sigh. "Actually, I don't have 9 lives. I don't have a single life at all." Fu Hongxue said, "Oh?" Du Shiki said, "My life is already Yan Nanfai's." Fu Hongxue said, "You know who I am?" Du Shiki nodded. "I owe him a life, and he owes you a life. I'm willing to pay you back for him." He stopped for a moment. His face was still carrying a smile. "I only hope you'll let me know one thing." Fu Hongxue said, "What is it?" Du Shiki said, "How did you recognize the cards?" Fu Hongxue didn't directly respond. Instead, he asked, "Do you know that every person has a fingerprint on their fingers?" Du Shiki said, "Yes, I do. Some have a circle fingerprints, other have a whirl fingerprints." Fu Hongxue said, "Do you know that no 2 fingerprints are alike in all the world?" Du Shiki did not know that. At that time, nobody knew things like that. He bitterly laughed. "I rarely look at people's hands, especially men's hands." Fu Hongxue said, "Even if you often look at others' hands, you wouldn't be able to tell. The differences are very minute, Dushiki said. But you can tell? Fu Hongxue said. Even if two biscuits were made using the very exact same mold, I would be able to tell them apart. Dushiki sighed. That must be a natural talent. Fu Hongxue dully said, right. It is a natural talent. Only, this is a natural talent that was practiced in a secret room without the slightest hint of light. Dushiki said, how long did you train for? Fu Hongxue said, I only practiced for 17 years, for only 6 to 10 hours a day. Dushiki said, did you train your saber skills in the same way? Fu Hongxue said, when you are training your eyesight, you must always grip your saber. Otherwise, you will fall asleep. Dushiki forced out a laugh. Only now do I realize the true meaning of the words a natural talent. The real meaning of a natural talent is a bitter training. Bitter training without pause. Fu Hongxue said, that set of dominoes was made using wood, and the wood had its own grainy patterns. Every single pattern was different. I watched you shuffle the cards twice. There isn't a single one of those 32 cards which I don't recognize, Dushiki said. But if that set of dice came out odd, wouldn't you have lost? Fu Hongxue said, that set of dice definitely wouldn't have come out odd. Dushiki said, why? Fu Hongxue dully said, because I am a natural talent at casting dice as well. They had already arrived at the end of the long alleyway. The streets outside were even darker. The night was now very deep. Fu Hongxue suddenly jumped onto a roof, the highest roof. Every dark nook and cranny was within his eyesight. He didn't kill people for others to watch. This couldn't be seen by others either. Dushiki finally caught up with him. What, exactly, do you want me to do? Fu Hongxue said, I want you to die. Dushiki said, you really want me to die? Fu Hongxue said, you are already a dead man. Dushiki didn't understand. Fu Hongxue said, starting now, you need to be dead for at least a year. Dushiki thought for a while. It seemed as though he somewhat understood, but still didn't fully understand. Fu Hongxue said, I've even prepared the coffin for you. It's at the graveyard just outside of the city. Dushiki blinked. Are there some other things in the coffin? Fu Hongxue said, there's 3 other people. Dushiki said, 3 people? Fu Hongxue said, but many people don't want for them to continue on living. Dushiki said, are you going to make sure that they continue to live? Fu Hongxue nodded. So I must help them find a safe, secret place. I cannot let anyone find them. Dushiki's gaze slowly brightened. And so I'll take the coffin back and arrange a glorious funeral for myself. Fu Hongxue said, you must die, because no one will think to ask a dead man about their whereabouts. Dushiki said, in addition, you're the one who killed me. Everyone will believe that you made an arrangement with Hu Kun, that you will kill me in exchange for him protecting them. By now, he finally understood. This was actually a simple matter. Only, Fu Hongxue was executing it in a very complicated way. Fu Hongxue said, I must be extremely cautious. They are simply too sinister and evil. Dushiki said, who, exactly, are they? Fu Hongxue said, Yang Wuji, Xiao Siwu, Gong Santu, and a demon decapitating saber of heaven's monarch. He didn't say Gong Tsayu's name. He didn't want to shock Dushiki too much. But the names of these 4 men was already more than enough to shock even someone with 8 times as much courage as an ordinary Mar. Dushiki gazed fixedly at him. They want to deal with you. Naturally, you won't let them off easy either. Fu Hongxue didn't deny that either. Dushiki suddenly let out a sigh. I'm not afraid of them, because I'm already a dead man. A dead man need fear no one. But you're broken bar. Fu Hongxue didn't deny it. Dushiki said, after you handle the affairs here, are you going to go find them? He looked at Fu Hongxue, then looked at that black saber. He suddenly chuckled. Perhaps the one who should be afraid isn't you, but them. 1 year from today, perhaps they will all be dead men as well. Fu Hongxue's gaze was distant. His person seemed to be distant as well. All around them was darkness, far off into the distance. After a long time, he slowly said, sometimes, I wish I had 9 lives as well, to deal with people like them. 1 life really is too few. A bleak and desolate mountain valley, barren and infertile soil. There were only 10 or so households in the mountain village. At the base of the mountain there was a small house, with a bamboo and chrysanthemum garden. From far away, Dushiki looked at the chrysanthemums beneath the bamboo stand. His eyes seemed to be filled with tenderness. Once he arrived here, it seemed as though he had turned into one of the honest, unsophisticated farmers. It seemed as though Fu Hongxue's heart was sighing with emotion as well. He just left the small house. Cao Yazin and the children were sleeping. Sleep peacefully. There's definitely no one who will find you here. What about you? Are you leaving? I'm not leaving. I'll be staying here a few days as well. He very rarely lied, but this time he really did lie. He couldn't not lie, because he couldn't not leave. Since he must leave, why cause unnecessary pain? Fu Hongxue lightly sighed. This is a good place. A person who is able to peacefully live out his life here must be a person of great bliss indeed. Dushiki squeezed out a smile. I grew up here. Originally, I could have been a very blissful person as well. Fu Hongxue said. Then, why did you leave? Dushiki was silent. After a long time, he suddenly asked, did you see those chrysanthemums beneath that patch of bamboo? Fu Hongxue nodded. Dushiki said, a little girl planted it. A little girl with big eyes and long hair. Fu Hongxue said, where is she now? Dushiki did not reply. He did not need to reply. The tears in his eyes spoke everything on his behalf. The chrysanthemums were still there, but the one who had planted them was gone. After another long period of time, he slowly said, actually, I should have come here to keep her company long ago. She must have been very lonely these past few years. When people died, would they still be as lonely as before? Fu Hongxue took out that stack of banknotes. He gave them to Dushiki. Who wanted to use these to purchase your life? No matter how you all use it, you need have no regrets. Dushiki said, why don't you give them to her personally? Are you leaving now? Fu Hongxue nodded. Dushiki said, aren't you going to bid her farewell? Fu Hongxue dully said, since I am going to leave, why say farewell? Dushiki said, for you to have done so much for her, she must be very dear to you. At least, you should have broken bar. Fu Hongxue interrupted him. You've done many things for me, but you aren't a dear one to me. Dushiki said, but I am a friend. Fu Hongxue coldly said, I have no dear ones, and I have no friends. The sun was setting in the west. It was sunset again. Fu Hongxue strode beneath the setting sun. His footsteps did not stop, but grew slower, as though he had suddenly begun carry a heavy burden on his shoulder. Did he really have no dear ones, no friends? Dushiki saw his solitary back disappear into the distance. He suddenly loudly said, I forgot to tell you something. Ukan is dead already. He was hung to death by someone with a rope at the top banister of the Ascendant Immortal Tea House. Fu Hongxue didn't turn his head. Who killed him? Dushiki said, don't know. Nobody knows. I only know that the person who killed him left behind 2 sentences. Those 2 sentences were left behind using fresh blood. This is my first time killing someone for free. It is also the last time I kill someone. The setting sun became even dimmer, but Fu Hongxue's eyes suddenly shone with light. The king finally put down his knife, his butcher's knife. If this sort of person made up his mind about something, he definitely would not change. But yeah, broken bar don't I, too, hold a butcher's knife in my hand. When can I put it down? Fu Hongxue tightly gripped his saber. The light in his eyes dimmed. He couldn't put down this saber yet. If people such as Gongsun were still alive in the world, he couldn't put down this saber. He definitely could not.